Faith Matters. An interactive program brought to you by MTA International.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another edition of Faith Matters, where you, our viewers, set the agenda by the questions you ask. Jazakumullah, and thank you for those who have sent in their questions. And of course, we'll be looking forward to receiving further questions from the conversations, discussions and observations we have today. As our regular viewers will know, you can find previous Faith Matters programs on YouTube. Go on to YouTube, put in the words MTA Online 1, Faith Matters, the name of the program, and hopefully you'll find your answer right there. And if not, you know what to do. Please send in your questions to faithmatters@mta.tv. That's faithmatters@mta.tv. And with that, it's my pleasure to welcome back to Faith Matters today, two regular panelists. Gentlemen, Jazakumullah, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Faith Matters once again. And of course, as my regular viewers will know, that joining me to my immediate right is, of course, Maulana Abdul Ghani Jahangir Khan Sahib, who's head of the French desk and a senior missionary here in the UK. Welcome, Jahangir Sahib.
Jazakumullah.
And to his right, and sitting right opposite me, of course, is the well-respected, and everyone, I'm sure our viewers also recognize him, is, of course, Dr. Zaid Ahmed Khan Sahib, who's the president of the Qaza Board, the Board of Jurisprudence for the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in the UK. Gentlemen, welcome to Faith Matters. And, well, one of the things which is often talked about on Faith Matters, we express lots of opinions, and that's perhaps appropriate. We go down under for our first question, which comes from Faizul Haq Sahib. His question is quite a short one. He's asking, what is freedom of speech? But just to set his question in context, he refers to his father, Dr. Ijazul Haq, and he says, in his own question, he says, my father used to say to me, quotes, "You have freedom, however your freedom ends where my freedom begins." And he ends the quote there. The other thing he raises, just to sort of personalize it somewhat, Dr. Sahib, he's, I suppose it's from one doctor to another. His father was a doctor, you're a doctor, and he says you may well know his father. So if I could open up the question, starting with yourself, Dr. Zaid. Freedom of speech is talked about a great deal. I mean, what is freedom of speech?
If I can just say that
Do you know his father?
He was a renowned dental surgeon from Lahore.
Okay.
I have heard of him, but unfortunately never had the pleasure of meeting him. But the name is there in the annals of dentistry in Lahore, and then obviously in Australia. So it's good to hear that, get that connection of someone that was respected in the Jamaat in my field of dentistry as well. Freedom of speech, this is such a vast subject, such an important subject in many ways. And we have to remember that what are the functions of speech? It is to get, the Holy Quran says that it is to get to the truth of a matter, that there should be no limits in getting to the truth of a matter. And because of the attribute of God Almighty of being Al-Haq, of being the truth. So bearing that in mind, we obviously try to emulate that attribute of God Almighty in trying to promote speech that has the aspect of truth in it. So all speech that has that aspect of truth and getting to that is to be promoted. Any speech which is limited and trying to bar you from getting to the truth is something that is prohibited, and therefore there should not be any limits on that. But at the same time, obviously, there are many things that we do know about speech, that it has to be decent, it has to make sure that it is not abusive. So therefore, bearing that in mind, we have to always bear in mind that there is total freedom of speech in order to get to the truth of a matter. There are certain limits, apart from the ones that I've mentioned, of course, in that sense, that each person has his own boundaries as well as to where his freedom lies or where his freedom ends. And I think Faizul Haq Sahib is referring to that aspect of it, that each person has his own criteria, own limits as to which the other person should not go beyond that. So that are the limits that are imposed on that. There is an instance, I'd like to relate this instance because I think that brings to mind, although it may not be directly related to freedom of speech, but it gives us an idea of how to respond when you are being abused. It's an incident from the life of Hazrat Abu Bakr, the first Caliph of Islam, radiyallahu anhu, that he was sitting with the Prophet and some other companions, that there was a man who came in and started to abuse and hurl abuse at him in the worst manner. And Hazrat Abu Bakr kept silent for a long time and did not say anything. Perhaps that was the freedom of speech, that he was allowing that person to carry on that abuse. And then after a little while, he started to respond to that abuse, but not in the same manner, of course, but he was trying to portray his own side of the story. And at that moment, the Holy Prophet ﷺ got up and left that gathering. And later, Hazrat Abu Bakr, when he met the Prophet, he said, "O Prophet of Allah, when I was being abused by that person, you sat there and you were listening and we did not respond to that. But as soon as I started to respond to that form of abuse, you got up and you left the gathering." The Prophet said, while you remained silent throughout that period, while you were being abused, the angels were answering on your part and were defending you. But as soon as you started to respond to that, the angels then left and Satan came and sat in that gathering, and therefore I could not remain in that gathering, and therefore I too left that gathering. So that, I think, brings into mind that obviously the person's freedom of speech was not curtailed at that point, but what was the response of Hazrat Abu Bakr, and keeping that in mind, this is what the Prophet of Allah has taught us in that respect.
Dr. Saab, Jazakumullah, and you touched upon some very crucial elements within the context of freedom of speech. And Jahangir Saab, as Dr. Saab has said, it's a very wide and vast subject. But Dr. Saab also touched about the kind of boundaries which are sometimes set. Sometimes we set our own personal boundaries, sometimes there's within the context of faith, religious boundaries. And of course there are the important boundaries of staying within legal parameters as well. And all these things in their own way have an application on how freedom of speech, which we all desire to see, but it must be done so with and I think that's what Faiz Saab also alluded to, with the respect of another person's freedom and respect of their rights as well.
Well, of course, I mean, it's often said that the tongue is an organ that doesn't contain a bone in it, but it can still break hearts. And so people should have a moral obligation rather than a legal obligation to restrain themselves when they're expressing their opinions, because any opinion can be expressed without hurting the feelings of other people to a large degree. Of course, there are going to be some people who would always be hurt by whatever somebody says about, which they don't like. But that's not the point. The point is that every person should have that moral obligation to not try to hurt people's feelings. The ideas, for example, religious ideas, people hold on to very emotionally often, we see. They can be discussed in a very, very civil atmosphere. It doesn't have to descend into an emotional and then physical, altercation at all. But there are also the aspect which you're bringing me onto, I think, is, for example, blasphemy laws, which exist in some countries. Interestingly, the blasphemy laws which exist in Pakistan and India were inherited from the British. They weren't imposed by Muslims or Hindus or anybody else. But the thing is that we don't really need such laws, because these laws can be abused. It all depends on the people in power, what they understand to be truth, what they understand to be all right, and what isn't all right. And people who don't, follow their norms of what's true or what's fine to say or what's not fine to say, they will be, penalized by such laws. So therefore, this is where the moral teaching, which has to be followed, individually and collectively, comes into its full force and its usefulness. Because everybody understands what somebody would not like to hear. It's the golden rule. Whatever you wouldn't like to hear about your own self or your own parents or your own dear ones, your loved ones, you shouldn't inflict that upon other people. So I think when Faisal Haq's father said that your freedom ends where mine starts, I think what he meant by that was that whatever freedoms you have, you shouldn't make your freedoms hurt anybody else's freedoms. One of the basic freedoms is to be able to live peacefully without being abused, without being forced to live in a kind of a mental torture throughout one's life because of what people are saying as well. So although we don't necessarily need laws to force people to do that, we do need moral laws and moral rules which people should feel bound to follow out of kindness and sympathy towards their fellow beings. So it's very important that people realize, and most people who've reflected deeply upon the question of freedom of speech and expression have come to the conclusion that we are not free to say whatever we like. Because whatever means also anything which can hurt other people and which can even cause riots and can cause wars in the world. This has actually happened. So therefore anything which is prone to causing pain should be avoided. And that's a general principle. It doesn't apply only to speech. It applies to anything we do or say, So therefore people should reflect long, because these days what we hear is we want to be free to say anything we want, and we don't give 2 cents about what it does to people. But that's a very irresponsible and childish way to deal with the matter, in my opinion.
So it's a qualified right in a way that, of course, you should, in a mature fashion...
As every right is qualified. I mean, if you think about it, no right is absolute. There is, that's just an ideal which people think exists, but there isn't any right which is unqualified. So why should freedom of speech be unqualified as well, then? That's the main point, isn't it?
And just as a final point, Dr. Saab, on this, I mean, we talked, and Jahangir Saab just talked about freedom of religion as well. I mean, within the context of any society, again, Jahangir Saab touched on the blasphemy laws. The whole sense was about protecting faith and protecting communities and religious beliefs. And, someone has an inherent right to say that your belief is wrong, my belief is right, or, I don't believe in anything, and therefore I can question another religion to the extent, and that's why even here in the United Kingdom, for example, we have religious incitement to hatred laws which exist to protect that very freedom of speech, because otherwise, as Jahangir Saab said, if you have a blanket freedom of speech application, there'd be no limits in terms of actually having a society which is based on the fundamentals of respect.
Absolutely. I mean, when we look at the life of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he would always bear that in mind, and his companions would always be guided in this respect, that when a companion of the Holy Prophet or a Jew came to the Holy Prophet ﷺ and said that this companion of yours has inflicted an injury on me, and only because he said that Moses was superior than the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet, knowing that that was not the case as such, but he said that you should not have said that. So that was the limit that was imposed.
It was the other way around.
Sorry.
The Prophet was superior to Moses, and that's what he was saying.
That's what the Muslim was
that's what he was suggesting. So the Prophet, in fact, imposed those limits on that to make sure that there was peace and harmony in society. And that is what we see today, and that is what we practice today, that we gather people together of all different religions and try to come in accord and try to make sure that our gatherings are peaceful and that we sit together, we can discuss together, but there are limits that are imposed on the speech that we have in those.
Gentlemen, Jazakumullah. very practical, but also, I think in the current climate, a very relevant discussion in what some of the challenges we see around the world. And my thanks, of course, to Faiz Haq Saab for your question. Our second question comes from Noreen Saiba in Germany. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for your question. There are two elements to her question. The first one, Jahangir Saab, that she's asking is referring to the Holy Quran, the revered and holy book for Muslims. Within that, there are many verses and surahs as they're described within the Holy Quran. But she's asking, are there specific verses which have been specified that should be recited on a daily basis?
Well, inevitably there's the Surah Fatiha, which is recited in every set or unit of the prayer, the Islamic prayer, Salah, or Namaz as it's called in some parts of the world. So that's inevitable. That is an absolute must. It's the liminary of the Holy Quran. It's the first the first chapter of the Holy Quran. So those verses, the 7 verses of Surah Fatiha, will be recited by every Muslim who is praying. Apart from that, the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did say that there was, specific verses which can be recited every day, but they're not obligatory. That's the point I wanted to make, is that he recommended reciting certain, surahs. One of them which has been mentioned is Surah Yasin, which has been highly recommended by the Holy Prophet ﷺ, but it's not at all an obligation. There were some, like for example Surah Al-Kahf, which the Prophet ﷺ said you should recite on Jummah, on the Friday. And there were many others as well which he mentioned, some which you can recite, before going to bed, etc. I would encourage the questioner to go and find out a little bit more about that, because there are so many. But to answer the question very pointedly, I think it's just the Surah Al-Fatiha, which is a compendium of the whole Quran. All the verities of the Quran are found in one shape or another within the Surah Al-Fatiha. So that is the main surah which has to be recited by every Muslim every day of their lives. So that's the only one which is really obligatory.
I remember regarding the Surah Fatiha, as Jahangir Sahib said, there was a companion, he said, the Prophet said to me, shall I teach you the greatest chapter of the Holy Quran? And the companion says the Prophet held my hand and he was about to leave the mosque, and I reminded him, Prophet Allah, you said you would teach me the greatest chapter of the Holy Quran. And he said, yes, all praise belongs to Allah. And then he recited the Surah Fatiha. And as Jahangir Sahib says, this is the beauty of hadith, that we have vouchsafed all of these traditions in which certain parts of the Holy Quran have been given special significance by the Prophet of God. And regarding Surah Yasin, he said that everything has a heart, and the heart of the Holy Quran is the Yasin, Surah Yasin. And if you recite that, you will be rewarded 10 times the reward for reciting the whole of the Holy Quran. And then this is also said of Surah Ikhlas, that he said, is it difficult for you to recite 1/3 of the Holy Quran in a single night? And the companion said, yes, Prophet Allah, it is difficult for us. And he said, Surah Ikhlas is 1/3 of the Holy Quran. So he has given this sort of guidance, and it is wonderful to absolutely look at that and then to try to make this a part of our life in attachment to the Holy Quran.
Jazakumullah, and linked to that as well, and that's an important sort of elaboration on, when we talk of the Holy Quran, it's not just the reading of the scripture, Jahangir Sahib, it's the understanding. And as Dr. Sahib has said, the hadith provide a very good example of understanding. And also there's the tafsir, the commentaries. And I remember even within our own community, the tafsir around the Surah Fatiha as well is quite extensive. And many years ago, when Khalifatul Masih Rabi', the 4th successor and Khalif of the Ahmadi Muslim community, remembered your dars during Ramzan, and he started the Surah Fatiha, and then many days onwards, and someone I think even asked him that you're still doing your dars around the Surah Fatiha, and he said, what does that tell you? The sense and the essence of this verse and the depth of it.
Yes, absolutely. See, when we're asked to recite the verses as well, it's not a mere recitation, although the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that every letter you recite bears a recompense, a reward with it. It brings a reward with it. But the main thing is to reflect upon it and not to recite it like a parrot, So that's very true what you just said. So when we're asked to recite the Surah Al-Fatiha so many times during the day in our prayers, it means that we have to reflect on all the different aspects of it, and in all the prayers we're given several opportunities to do so. So we shouldn't focus only on one aspect and neglect all the others. We should focus on all the different aspects and try to relate that to our own lives, to draw benefit from it, you see.
Jazakumullah, Jahangir Saab, Dr. Saab, as ever, and my thanks also to Noreen Saib, although I've thanked perhaps Noreen Saib a bit too early because she had a second question, I mean, it's linked to the Holy Quran, Dr. Sahib, because she's asking that for menstruating women, is it permitted for them to read the Holy Quran in this day and age through mobile apps, like the Quran app, which now exists on mobile phones and tablets, etc.? And obviously this is use of modern technology, but we see now that the Holy Quran is available through such media.
Absolutely, there is no bar to women in that special time of the month for them to be able to read the Holy Quran. We have to always remember that the Holy Quran is a sacred book that we have, of course. It is very special to Muslims, and we treat it with the utmost respect that it deserves. And cleanliness is part of our faith in any way. And Muslims, men and women, when they recite the Holy Book from the Holy Book itself, we should be in a pure and clean state. We should be in the state of ablution as well, that we should perform the ablution. And then we are also told that because the words are coming out of our mouth, that our mouth should be absolutely clean as well. So people say that we should obviously make sure that we brush your teeth and so on, that when we are reciting the Holy Quran, women have got this special dispensation that is given to them during this month. But as far as the Holy Quran is concerned, yes, they can recite the Holy Quran, but they should take some caution in that when either if it is the Holy Quran or an electronic device that they are holding, then they should have a clean cloth that they are putting that item in and then reciting from that, rather than holding either the Holy Quran or the tablet directly. They should take just this precaution to make sure that that sanctity of the Holy Quran is preserved at all times.
Jazakallah, Dr. Saab, and just a final point on this, Jahangir Saab. It also illustrates, it's a distinction within Islam that people say, oh yes, if a woman that is going through that time of the month, that she's prevented, you know, she's barred from reading the Holy Quran. Actually, there's a subtle difference here. It's an exemption.
It's a very subtle one, but when you think about it, it's not subtle at all. You see, whatever women are allowed not to do while they're in the period of menstruation is not a debarment from doing something, and therefore they can't benefit from it or they can't get a reward for it. On the contrary, they are getting the same reward that men are for doing these acts. So it's a dispensation for them. So they're dispensed with having to do certain acts, for example, praying or reading the Quran. So even though they want to do it, they're told you don't have to anymore now. And there's a practical reason which Dr. Saab has just given. But you will still receive the reward that you would have received had you been doing it. So in effect, the men have the raw deal in all this, because they still have to do all the things to get the reward. They have to work for their reward, whereas the women don't always have to work for their reward. They're given it anyway. So it's a compliment paid to them. And also, we mustn't forget that there are many women who, when they go through their menstrual period, are actually suffering. So it's not an easy time of the month for many of the women. Some women have more difficulty at some ages as well, and at another age they don't have so much difficulty, but at some points in their life they do. And so therefore they're dispensed from having to do these things just out of regard for them, so that they can rest and they don't have to worry about doing all these things. And Allah says, don't worry, I will give you a reward anyway. You know, so that's one of the nicer aspects of Islam, where it gives these facilities to ladies which we don't see in many other religions actually, and I think this should be celebrated and not used as because of ignorance. It's sheer ignorance that people think that women are therefore second-class citizens because they're not allowed to do these things. But no, they're not being allowed to do them. They're being allowed not to do them and being given the reward anyway. You know, they're exempted, exactly. Yeah.
Gentlemen, Jazakumullah, and my thanks also to Noreen Saib for your two questions. Our next question, we're going to travel to Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia. And Assalamu alaikum Ataul Islam Sahib, thank you for your kind words about MTA and the program. His question, again, is something which is debated around the world and discussed, and indeed is being applied in terms of practice around the world. And it's this whole issue of when it comes to children and birth, etc., for those people who perhaps for one reason, a medical reason or whatever, cannot have children. There's been the development of sperm banks, for example, and men have been asked to donate sperm to help in, for those people who are unable to do so. And his question's a simple one, in the sense that Dr. Saab, he's asking, is the donation of human sperm, man's sperm, is it haram or permissible?
Well, Islam is very direct, clear about the family unit, and it says that you can procreate within that marriage, within the family unit. So a husband and the wife, only they are permitted to have children within the confines of that marriage. So a husband is not permitted, either directly or indirectly in this case, by donating his sperm, to have a child with anyone other than his own wife. So Islam categorically forbids the donation of sperm to be used on anyone other than his wife. Medical advances are such that yes, this is one of the ways that fertilization is achieved. It can be achieved within the marriage with his own wife, but it can also be used and donated as it is in parts of the world which Islam does not permit, because it raises a number of issues, of moral and ethical issues as well. It raises issues about the rights of the father, for instance. The father has a right to have contact with his progeny, to be able to bring them up. Islam teaches him a prayer of Bihabli minas salihin, grant me righteous progeny. And if he is not going to be a part of their upbringing, then obviously he is not going to be in control of their training and so on. It also infringes the rights of the children. That in Islam, the children have to have direct contact with their parents, with their father, and in this case that would not be possible. Then the mother, of course, also has rights, that the father is responsible for the maintenance of those children. And if that is not the case, that he is not the biological father to the husband that she's married, then that's not going to happen either. So taking all of that into account, Islam talks about family unit, a cohesive family unit, and that is only possible when children are born within the confines of that marriage. So Islam does not permit donation of sperm to any other than your own wife.
Jahangir Saab, I mean, that's very clear. It's, it's clear cut in that sense as well. But there's almost at times in industry, we've seen this issue of designer babies and people wanting specific eyes or coloured eyes for children, etc. It all then sort of adds to this kind of debate and discussion around.
Well, it does, but I mean, the main issue, as well as Dr. Saab has said, there were moral issues, there were legal issues for the inheritance, etc. But there's also the danger of children of incest, of children from the same father, not knowing that they share a father, actually meeting each other, falling in love, getting married, and then that's qualified as incest once they find out that they're actually brother and sister. Not to speak of the genetic disorders which might be born from the children of such a union. But then we move on to this other area where you hear about designer babies, etc. And the stance on this in general is that if genetic material is not being used for the creation of new life, that is not for conception, then in that case it can be examined for what it's being used. If, for example, there's a case where it is known that a child, or a fetus even, bears a genetic disorder which can be corrected by the insertion of genes coming from another source. If the parents, for example, are the ones who have from whom the child has inherited this disorder in the first place, they will not be able to give healthy genetic material to correct that. It will have to come from an outside source. So in that case, it would be, if it's for a correction of a disease, for example, it would be considered to be similar to the case where somebody is receiving a donated organ. For example, a heart or a liver or, whatever it is, a kidney. So that would be of that category. As long as it's not something which is being taken to conceive from. That's the main issue, which Dr. Saab has already touched upon, because of all the legal, the moral, all the other aspects which will be, entailing from that. So that's something different. But as long as it's only restricted to this. But as we go into the area of designer babies, like for example, I want my baby to have green eyes, or I want my baby to be very tall, or this or that. I want them to have red hair or blonde hair or whatever it is. This is fiddling around with nature, and this is not looked upon, with sympathy by Islam, for the very fact that people then, once you open those floodgates, it's a bit like a Pandora's box then. There's no knowing where that's going to take people to, And then maybe some people might want other things as well, which are not found in human beings, and they'd have to insert animal genes or plant genes into them to make them, for example, glow in the dark, or be able to do this or do that, which human beings can't do. Then that will be meddling with nature, and the effects of that could be horrendous. We don't know. We don't have the knowledge, and we will never have the knowledge to predict what the outcome of that will be eventually. So that should be completely, left untouched, that aspect of it.
Images of Spider-Man suddenly came to mind.
Yes. Suddenly they're becoming possible.
Well, they are. Marvel Comics, And a final point on this, Dr. Saab, just in terms of science and this role of procreation, man and wife, husband and wife come together, children are produced. In certain cases, it's not possible. There may be some reasons behind it. Yet Islam is also, over time, and we've seen it evolved, whereas Jahangir Saab's already alluded to certain elements. We've seen the incorporation, for example, of IVF treatment within to help in terms of child reproduction and childbirth, etc. These are important steps, because too often people sort of detach religion from science. But we've actually seen over time, and in our own lifetimes as well, how science and faith actually are perfectly compatible, and how they're brought together.
Yeah, this is just one example of how science and religion do coexist. And as far as reproduction is concerned, yes, there may be medical issues that for certain conditions they're not able to father children. But Islam promotes the use of medicine, advances in medicine that we have now, within the limits that Jahangir Saab has talked about. And as far as it is within the confines of that marriage, then Islam says that it is permissible to have IVF, in vitro fertilization, test tube babies, and that is something that can be done. So Islam is all pro that, and does not talk about anything against advances in science for the benefit of mankind as such.
Gentlemen, Jazakumullah, and my thanks also to Ataul Islam Saab from Jakarta for your question. We're travelling back to Australia again for a question from Lubna Ahmed Saiba. Assalamu alaikum. And she's, after introducing herself, talking about certain things, and an Islamic council in Pakistan had recently declared that the light beating for women is permissible. I mean, just to put this into context, in framing her question, I mean, any Muslim will look towards Islam, and you look at the rights, Jahangir Saab, that Islam introduced for women at the time of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, the rights to own property, for example. We can all recount traditions at that time, the backward traditions, the inhumane traditions of burying young girls alive, if a girl was born. Yet that was all put to an end with the advent of the Holy Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And of course, as instructions and the Quran was revealed, the actual conduct of women and the protection of women, indeed the enhanced status of women within Islam, was very paramount. Yet you see around the world, and particularly in so-called Muslim countries in particular, that the abuse of women continues, and the inequity with which women are dealt is quite paramount. And I think in that context, it's probably Lubna has seen the situation in Pakistan, where clearly there are situations where these so-called councils pass decisions or make calls, and then quote the protection of verses of the Holy Quran, which have been sort of interpreted in a very specific and sometimes misconstrued as well.
Well, obviously misconstrued, but I mean this just illustrates the condition that Muslim countries are in who do not recognize the Imam Mahdi and the promised Messiah sent by Allah for their guidance. When we see the promised Messiah ﷺ telling his followers that you men should bear patiently with whatever your women do, all the things which you don't like about them, just bear with them patiently. He said, barring adultery. And even then, the most you can do in that case is you can divorce them. That's as far as you can go, you know?
All this nonsense we see around the world is exactly
they're
that.
not interested in protecting women. They're interested in protecting their, distorted views of verses of the Quran. That's more important to them than actually protecting the people that those verses were revealed for. So why don't we see Muslim countries legislating? I mean, they must do sometimes, but we don't always see it, at the fore. Where they're legislating to actually protect the rights of women, because in many Muslim countries many rights of women are denied them. They should be legislating and vociferously speaking about all these issues to protect their women. They're not doing it. Now the problem with this again is that they're taking an extreme set of circumstances which is spoken about in the Quran, and they're applying that in a generalized form. And the only lesson which men are going to draw from that is that, there you go, now we have the right to do whatever we want to our wives, and now it's become legal. So nobody's going to come after us with the law, Nobody's going to come and, give us retribution for what we're doing to our wives. Now we have the right, we have carte blanche to do whatever we want. That's the problem because they haven't thought it through. But the wisdom which God has sent the promised Messiah with, they're bereft of it. If they don't want to accept him, they will not benefit from his wisdom, and they'll keep on, going from one post to the next, shifting their goalposts all the time as it suits their agenda. That's the unfortunate thing which we have to highlight here. But this particular piece of legislation is based on a verse which is highly criticized by non-Muslims, and rightly so, not because the verse itself is a bad thing, but because of the way Muslims understand it and portray it. So anybody any sane person, anybody in the right frame of mind, if they look at the way that this verse is interpreted by many, many Muslims out there, they must condemn it, and so do we. But the actual fact of the matter is that this verse is speaking about a situation where the wife is actually violent. There's an uprising which is violent against her husband. In this case, the victim is not the wife, the victim is the husband. Whereas today we're being shown that, actually it's the other way around. We want to turn the women into the victims and make them become subjected to the violent abuse of their husbands. So you can't do better with twisting the meanings of a verse around. They've twisted it 180 degrees around, and they've put all the focus now on the woman being they've turned her into a victim now, whereas the verse here is talking of a man. So here, actually what Allah is saying in this verse, and I'm going to read the part which is relevant to it. So it says that as for those on whose part, as for those meaning the wives, on whose part you men, meaning fear their what's called, often translated as disobedience, but actually the word nushuz means a violent uprising. Admonish them, that means talk to them and explain things to them, and leave them alone in their beds, that means separate yourselves from them in a marital sense, and chastise them, which is the translation of the verb daraba here, which means literally to beat. So beat them, literally. Then if they obey you, seek not a way against them, surely Allah is high, great. Now, this here is speaking of the situation where a man is facing the violence, domestic violence, coming from his wife. So this is not a normal situation. It's an abnormal situation, but because the Holy Quran is a book which responds to all different common situations in human life, and this is a situation which is nowadays so common that they actually have associations out there in the Western world in particular to help men who are victims of domestic abuse. And this is a taboo subject usually because men don't feel like talking about this. They are also looked down upon and not believed even by people when they say dare to come out into the open and say that I'm actually suffering abuse within my home. But it's a fact that this is actually happening. So there is a verse which talks about this. Now, seen in the context of what Allah says, that you cannot give a retribution for an evil which is done to you more than the evil itself, and that the punishment has to be something like the deed which was committed. Therefore, if Allah is saying that you can, as a last resort, because first of all you're admonishing the women that they shouldn't behave like this. If they don't listen, then you should separate yourselves as a second step from them within the home. But then as a last resort, you can raise your hand against them in defense. It means that the women must have been raising their hands against them first. And also Allah is saying that the husbands fear this, whatever action is being committed by their wives, they actually fear that. Now, for a husband to fear something his wife is doing, it has to be something extremely violent. However, it comes with qualifiers. And the qualifiers have been given by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He said that the normal way to be is that there is no violence within the home. First of all, men have been repeatedly told that they should treat their women as if they are like crystal, of high value and also very breakable. So they shouldn't try to force them to do things which they don't want to do. They shouldn't force women to do things, and if they don't like something in their wife, the Prophet ﷺ has been very, very specific about that if you don't see one quality in her that you do, if you see something in her that you don't like, you will definitely find another quality which you do like, so focus on that. Everything is done to preserve the peace and to make, within the couple, and to make them love each other, to find the positives in each other. That's what the focus is on in Islam. But here, what we see therefore is that the man has to restrain himself even when he is responding physically to the violence of his wife, which is physical. And the Prophet ﷺ said that he cannot use full force against his wife. He cannot strike her on her face or any sensitive part of her body. He cannot leave a mark on her. So therefore, if he can't leave a mark on his wife, that means that it's only a symbolic kind of defense which he's allowed to use. Now, going from this to the other extremes, where we see men in the Muslim world actually physically beating their wives in public because she said something he didn't like or she did something he didn't like, this is like worlds apart. And it is a total misconstruing of the purport of this verse, which has to do with men who are victims of domestic abuse. So we have to put things into context, and I'm very sad that Pakistan has legislated regarding this, because this was only for those circumstances where the men were being, receiving physical abuse from their wives. So hopefully they'll return to their senses and correct that piece of legislation, inshallah.
Jahangir Sahib, thank you. On this, Dr. Sahib, just to sort of take that into the context, I mean, Jahangir Sahib sort of illustrated the purpose behind the verse. But in the context of women's place, as I said in my introductory remarks, Islam as well, I was reminded when Jahangir Sahib was speaking about the example of the Holy Prophet and the hadith, the best amongst you is he who is best to his wife. I mean, these were instructions, that was the words of the Holy Prophet, but even also in his actions, and indeed in the context of, your gentleman who has to deal with things of jurisprudence within the community, the rights and obligations, it's not a one-way street, there are rights and obligations for both the husband and the wife towards each other, which will actually be the basis and foundation of a long-lasting, loving marriage, and it's built on respect as well. But through the examples we've seen of the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, in the way he was with Hazrat Khadija, in their time through the renaissance of Islam that we hold to be Ahmadiyat, and the example of the promised Messiah and the revered status of Hazrat Amma Jan, we saw, some great practical examples of not just the text, not just the saying and but the doing is the acting, and the examples are immense.
I'm glad you put the status of women pre-Islam into context in your opening. And then we saw, if we look at the history of early Islam, the history of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and we see the great transformation, as he's been called the liberator of women, hasn't he? And how he actually freed women from all the shackles that they were under at that time. And the transformation was totally complete. Not only in word, as you say, but in the actual practice of the Holy Prophet, first and foremost of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he has been, after all, called the most excellent exemplar. So this is where Muslims should be taking their cue from, is that the Holy Quran was revealed to him. He would have understood these verses the best. No one else could have interpreted any better. Jahangir Sahib has encapsulated the spirit of those verses as to what is behind that. And then the Holy Prophet ﷺ put that into practice in regards to his marriages that he had. And we find, of course, no incidents of ever being in a situation that he would ever have raised a finger against any of his wives. And his companions and the rightly guided caliphs who followed him, if we look at their own lives as well, we find absolutely that they also modeled their life on the Prophet ﷺ, and we do not find any instances of wife beating in that instance. Then, of course, there was a long period of time in which Muslims were bereft of guidance of that nature, until God Almighty sent the promised Messiah ﷺ as a reformer, the Renaissance, to rejuvenate the teachings, true teachings of Islam. And we saw in our history annals of the Ahmadiyya community the life of the promised Messiah ﷺ. That was also a reflection. He based his life on the true model of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And his wife also, she has given witness to the fact of what their matrimonial life was, in a house of bliss. And then, of course, we've been followed by the rightly guided caliphs after the promised Messiah ﷺ, and each of their lives are also a model of this. So that is the practical way of living your life in complete accord with the commandments of the Holy Quran as were practiced by the Holy Prophet ﷺ. So this is what Islam, true Islam is, and this is what the status of women in Islam is. And if Muslims were to realize and remodel their lives in accordance with these true teachings, then in my position in the Qaza board, we also would have very few matrimonial problems. But this is the important thing, is that we should realize what the Holy Quran speaks of women and of the life of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And as I have said, all the Khulafa, this is what we need to model our lives on.
Gentlemen, Jazakumullah, and you've thrown a very practical light and insight into this. And I think setting the context is also important in these, because too often there's this literal interpretation and literal translation without any, we referred in an earlier question about the commentary and understanding verses of the Holy Quran, and perhaps those who seek to legislate should perhaps reflect on the essence and the context, as Zaid Sahib, you've so eloquently put the example of the Holy Prophet himself, the Khulafa Rashideen, and indeed in our case for the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the example of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the promised Messiah, and the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Gentlemen, Jazakumullah, my thanks also to Lubna Ahmad Saiba for your question. We're moving towards the sort of last 10 minutes of the program, and we're going to travel to Africa. From memory, it's a continent we haven't visited on this program thus far, but we're going to Ghana, to Isa Gyabin, and he's talking about, Jahangir Sahib, the issue of, or the procedure, or the way we go about praying and performing salat in congregation. He's actually observed, it wasn't something he found in mosques of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, but in other mosques that he's visited, that it's literally as he has been praying, someone else has come and stood next to him. And he quotes quite specifically that as they stand next to him, they try and join up feet. And he said, rather than actually that symbolic of not allowing gaps between each other, the actual attempt on sort of joining up feet means that someone's actually ended up stamping on his foot, which actually takes away from his own prayer, to be quite honest. I'm sure he's felt that. So rather than focus on his prayers, he's been distracted because someone's stepped on his foot. I think we'd all probably react in that way. What's the essence? I mean, where does this tradition come from?
It's happened to me also, because when I was once praying in a Sunni mosque, we made our own congregation after the congregational prayer had finished, and somebody came, a Sunni I suppose, came and joined us, into our prayer, The person joined his feet with mine, and it was extremely disturbing because we don't have that practice. But I think it's because they misunderstand, and this is the advice given by many non-Salafi Sunni imams. It's mostly the Salafis, the Wahhabis, who join their feet together with the people on either side of them in the prayer. They tell them that you've misunderstood the hadith which speaks about this. Now, this is not an actual order given by the Prophet ﷺ. It's just a comment which was made by a companion which he'd seen being done, but we have to explain the context. So it's a hadith from the Sunan Abi Dawud, and it's book 1 and hadith 104, where it's related that Abu al-Qasim al-Jadali reports. He said that I heard Nu'man ibn Bashir radhiyallahu anhu relate that the messenger faced the people and instructed, straighten your rows, by Allah you should straighten your rows in prayer meaning, or else Allah will create disagreement between your hearts. Now what he meant was that if people don't stand all at the same level to each other, what will happen is if you don't make that into something important, some people who feel a bit more important than others will start moving ahead and thinking that why should I stand next to these lesser human beings than myself, so they'll start moving ahead, and that's where discord will start within the community. So as people well know, within Islam, whether it's a king or a pauper, they have to stand, if they're in the same row, they have to stand shoulder to shoulder, to show that in front of God we're all human beings, there's absolutely no differess, whatever our different standards in life may be. So this is shown in practice in Islam, which is one of the beauties of Islam actually, the equalizingness, if you want, of Islam. But here, Nu'man ibn Bashir then states, he said, I saw each person join his shoulders with the next person's, and his knees and ankles with the next person's. Now this is something he observed. So the Sunni fuqaha who don't agree with the fact that you have to have your feet touching throughout the prayer will tell you that here, obviously, what he's seeing is people trying to straighten their rows by aligning their shoulders together and also their feet and then their knees. So they're looking to see if all the knees are on one line, all the feet are on one line. So they're doing it in that way, but that's only at the beginning, before the prayer actually starts. But they don't continue that, and they say the proof that we haven't been asked to keep our feet together in the prayer is that nobody, not even the Salafis, ask you to keep your knees touching the knees of the other person in the prayer, because it's physically impossible to do so. Anyway, so therefore they said that we shouldn't, put undue stress on the fact that our feet have to be touching. And it is very distracting, and so therefore it detracts from the concentration of the person in prayer. That's very true. So anyway, this is not an order given by the Prophet ﷺ. It's just a way to straighten your rows. Once your rows are straight, then you take your proper position, and your feet shouldn't be touching the feet of another person, unless it's a very squeezed place, and physically it's happening, but that's an exception. It shouldn't be the rule.
What's the significance of, straightening, and it's a kind of order being imposed on worshippers? Well,
you see, straightening, having straight rows shows organization. It also shows obedience. There's nothing like the prayer at the Kaaba, for example, where the rows aren't actually straight, but they're round. But for whoever's in the row, it seems like it's straight, because you can only see a few people down, on either side. And the idea behind that is the unity of the Muslims in their obedience. Being organized, being, in a how would I say, in a way that looks beautiful as well. But also it's a practical reason, because don't forget that in the Muslim prayer we also have to go down into prostration, and therefore we have to leave a certain gap, between us and the person ahead of us and the person behind us, just so that they have enough room to go down into prostration. Now if we weren't asked to stand in straight rows, it would be a nice melee, wouldn't it? And then how would you know where to stand? If, for example, you've already left a gap between people and suddenly somebody comes in and stands in between the two of you, what will happen next? So we have to have that for a practical reason as well. And that's the beauty of the whole thing. It's a nice system which works very well.
Yes. The Prophet ﷺ said that stand in straight rows, as Jahangir Sahib has said, because on the Day of Judgment you will be presented before your God, in straight rows, believers will be presented to God.
Yes.
So nowadays we have the advantage of having lines on the ground wherever we may be praying.
Creative shades of green as
Absolutely,
well. So,
yes,
that
or
helps
the
you.
2 shades of green.
I
And
remember, just on the shades of green, if I may, Imam Atal Mujib Rashid Sahib, the Imam of the London Mosque, once he came to me and he said that, how would you phrase this in very few words? Because I've noticed that, in our mosque we usually have a pale shade of green carpet and then a darker shade and then a pale shade, and it goes on like that. He said, but I've noticed some people when they start their prayer, they think they have to stand on the top part of one of the segments, and then they have to prostrate on the next one ahead. And this is creating difficulties. So how would you phrase that? I said, well, how would you phrase it? He said, well, I've thought of something. What do you think about it? He said, please stand on only one shade of green. So then when you're in your prostration, you have to be on the same shade, and that worked. And that's what went up in the mosque eventually.
So
yes.
that's one way of keeping our rows straight, as long as our shoulders are in line with each other. And Khalifa Rabi, when we have larger gatherings, we used to have in Islamabad, when they weren't able to put rows down or lines on the floor, he used to say, you should look to your right and look to your left and stand shoulder to shoulder. And if you're obviously able to see someone who is not quite in line with you, that means the line is not straight. So you should align yourself by looking right and left to make sure you're shoulder to shoulder and that your rows are straight. So this is just a matter of making sure that our rows are absolutely straight. And the other aspect I was thinking about, if we are touching feet to feet, which part of the foot should be in alignment according to their thinking? If you have a person with a size 13 foot and one with a size 3 foot, the child.
Yeah.
So how are they going to align? Are their toes going to align, or are the heels going to align?
Yeah, that's
so I
another
think
problem.
the shoulder to shoulder aspect of it, which the Prophet did say, is something that we take on board.
And it's part of the wisdom of faith as well, isn't it, to apply.
Yes.
One final point on this, Dr. Zaisab, of course, is when you join prayer, because here they were saying about people joining, there's a real significance, and the equality point that Jahangir Saab touched upon, that you're actually asked to join the front rows. You're not, if you sort of go into the mosque and the front row isn't complete, whether it's to the left or the right of that front row, you're asked to join wherever there's a gap and fill up. And then again, that reflects the sort of equality of faith. The other thing which, as you were both speaking, which sort of dawned upon me, if you go to other religions as well, you see pews in Christianity and within synagogues, again, a similar setup, and in gurdwaras and mandirs for that. The idea of having a straight line and the congregation looking in a particular direction in uniformity is actually reflective of other faiths as well.
Unity, uniformity, conformity to rule, that's all seen there. And when we go to the mosque, and as you say, there is a row that has not been quite completed, then you have to go and make sure that you stand in that row. And the Prophet said, stand close to each other, do not leave a space for Satan, meaning do not leave a space big enough for another person to come, or for that to be left. That row should be filled by having your shoulders touching with the person next to you, so that there are no gaps in the rows that you're
Of course, meaning that Satan will come in, meaning that there will be dissension in between people. If somebody thinks, like, I don't like that person, I don't want to stand next to that person, well, no, in Islam you have to stand next to the person. And then that will diminish your hatred for the person. It's just another measure to bring peace and equality into society.
Well, as we complete the row, we complete the program. Gentlemen, Jahangir Saab, Jazakumullah to yourself, and of course Dr. Zaid Saab to you for your very detailed and scholarly answers to a range of different questions. And my thanks to you, viewers at home. Without you, Faith Matters would not be the program that it is. Just as a final reminder, for any comments, thoughts, observations, or questions of your own, faithmatters@mta.tv is the email. You can also follow us on Twitter, MTA Faith Matters, and of course, we look forward to receiving your questions. Until the next time, from all of us on Faith Matters from London, Assalamu alaikum.
وعملوا الصالحات Adama, wa jannatu jannati, ibn Adama, alumalu male, ibn Adama, wa jannatu jannati.
Kafi, what is this? Please sit.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
So we have got some messages from different French-speaking countries who've been watching our programs. Some messages of congratulations.
Please.
Thank you, Jazakumullah.
For the benefit of the audience.
Yes.
And also translate them into English.
Inshallah.
Right.
Donc nous avons reçu des messages de différents pays francophones qui ont commencé à suivre cette nouvelle série Rencontres avec les francophones. Tout d'abord, nous avons reçu un message de la mission islamique Ahmadiyya de la Côte d'Ivoire qui dit « Nous, les membres de la Jamaat islamique Ahmadiyya, demandons les prières du Khalifatul Masih et de la Jamaat Ahmadiyya du monde entier et nous présentons nos vifs remerciements pour ce programme qui est destiné à la francophonie. Qu'Allah nous donne le pouvoir de bien profiter de ces programmes. Amin. Wassalam. Abdurrashid Anwar, l'Amir de la Côte d'Ivoire. So the first message has come from the Jamaat Ahmadiyya of Ivory Coast. And Mr. Abdurrashid Anwar, the Amir Jamaat of Ivory Coast, says, all members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat of Ivory Coast request Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Rabi, Ayatollah Ta'ala Misr Aziz, and the worldwide Ahmadiyya Jamaat for prayers. And we present our hearty thanks for this program, which is aimed at the French-speaking world. May Allah help us to benefit greatly from this program. Le deuxième message que nous avons reçu donc, vient de la Jamaat Ahmadiyya du Burkina Faso. Et c'est M. Mohamed Idriss, l'amir et missionnaire en charge de la Jamaat qui nous écrit. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Messages after they returned home?
Pardon?
Did they send these messages after they returned home?
No, they've come after having watched the first programs.
But how could they offer these messages while they were here, present themselves?
No, they in fact came before they reached, because they watched one program and then they sent in the messages and we didn't have time to present them on the last program.
One program was before Jalsas.
Which program?
French.
Yes, the first
French question answer, the very
yes.
first one was conducted before
right.
and they watched the program over there.
I see, they're speaking of that program.
Yes, and of the series to follow.
I understand, which was first conducted here.
Yes.
And it's their reaction from their own countries.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Make it clear to the audience.
Donc le calife voulait savoir exactement si ces messages sont venus depuis que les amirs sont arrivés ici pour la conférence. Mais en fait, ces messages représentent le message de la part de toute la Jamaat, donc de la Côte d'Ivoire et du Burkina Faso, lorsque ces dernières avaient vu notre première émission de cette série. Donc le message du Burkina Faso est « Nous, la Jamaat Ahmadiyya du Burkina Faso, remercions sa sainteté Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV pour l'initiative d'une émission s'adressant aux francophones. Puisse Allah accorder la réussite et longue vie à cette émission. » So the Burkina Faso Jamaat has sent the following message. The Jamaat of Burkina Faso express their gratitude to His Holiness Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV for launching this program which particularly addresses the French-speaking world. May Allah grant success and a long life to this new program.
Now let's get down to the brass tacks.
Première question.
La première question, Razoul. Salam alaikum. Cette question vient de la République du Congo. Le christianisme étant une religion nationale, étant donné que Jésus fut envoyé seulement pour les enfants d'Israël, comment expliquer son expansion internationale?
As Christianity was a national religion confined to the children of Israel, how do we explain its global expansion, what we see today?
Because of two major main things. Whenever a prophet addresses a people around the area, whether they belong to the people themselves whom the prophet primarily addressed, or they do not belong to the people whom the prophet primarily addressed. Regardless of this, the people around are always addressed. Like, this is the style of the Quran. In the beginning, angels were addressed, and the jinns were included. The address was to the angels, while most certainly Satan was not an angel. So the creatures which are below the ones who are addressed are automatically addressed. We have a positive proof from the Holy Quran that Moses came to Israel, or children of Israel, but people from Pharaoh accepted him. Who was her foster mother? Pharaoh's wife. And she believed in him, and that is why the Holy Quran praises her highly. And one of the Pharaoh's family also believed in Moses and stood firm in his belief, so that the Holy Quran has recorded his advice to his own people. So how can you say that would not apply to the people of Jesus, etc., as well, to the time of Jesus as well? All prophets, whenever they address a people, because it's a ne'mah, it's a blessing from Allah, the main address is to a people, but the people outside that, the ones who were addressed are also addressed in a secondary way. And secondly, Jesus Christ's message, which you find spread here, it came all the way from Israel and to Rome and along to these corners, because it was prophesied by Jesus Christ himself that he will be given a sort of global domination. And because of that promise which was given to Jesus Christ, this new phase of Christianity, where a global domination is promised and it is fulfilled, that had to be kept. So people, whether they were originally Israelites or non-Israelites, or whoever followed, benefited from that promise.
Sa sainteté, le calife nous dit que le christianisme s'était répandu dans le monde entier, dans les peuples aux alentours, donc des enfants d'Israël, pour deux raisons principales. La première étant que lorsqu'un prophète vient adresser un message venant de Dieu à son peuple, à lui, les peuples des alentours, les peuples des pays limitrophes sont aussi automatiquement adressés. Et cela s'est passé dans le cas de tous les prophètes. Le Coran nous donne la preuve de ceci lorsqu'il dit que lorsque Dieu s'adressa aux anges, on voit que les djinns étaient aussi inclus en cela, même s'ils n'étaient pas adressés donc en premier. Satan, par exemple, parle aussi lorsque Dieu s'adresse aux anges, comme s'il était adressé lui aussi, alors qu'on sait que Satan n'était certainement pas un ange. Donc les créatures, sous celles qui sont adressées, bénéficient dans une certaine mesure de ce message venant de Dieu. On voit aussi une autre preuve du Saint-Coran qui mentionne le message de Moïse, que la paix soit sur lui. On sait que Moïse était venu essentiellement pour les enfants d'Israël. Mais nous voyons qu'il y a certains membres du peuple d'Égypte, du peuple de Pharaon, qui l'avaient accepté en tant que prophète. On voit notamment la femme du Pharaon, qui est mentionnée avec des termes très beaux dans le Saint-Coran. On loue donc son caractère pour avoir accepté Moïse. Et on parle aussi d'un autre membre de la famille de Pharaon qui est resté très ferme sur sa foi, malgré toute l'opposition. Il a accepté Moïse avec beaucoup de fermeté. Et il était un Égyptien, il n'était pas un enfant d'Israël. Donc tous les prophètes, lorsqu'ils viennent, apportent cette ni'ma, cette faveur venant d'Allah. Et c'est une faveur qui ne peut se confiner à un seul peuple. Cela déborde vers les peuples aux alentours qui en profitent aussi. Deuxièmement, le message de Jésus-Christ, on voit qu'à propos de cela, Dieu avait fait une promesse de domination globale. Et on voit que ce message a remonté la côte d'Israël, donc autour de la mer Méditerranéenne, pour arriver à Rome et ensuite au reste de l'Europe. Donc Dieu, puisqu'il avait promis de donner à Jésus une sorte de domination globale, il fallait bien que cette promesse s'accomplisse d'une façon ou d'une autre. Et c'était ceux qui allaient accepter Jésus, qui qu'il soit des enfants d'Israël ou des autres, par lesquels cette prophétie devait s'accomplir. Donc quiconque accomplirait la promesse de la domination globale. C'est ainsi que le message de Jésus-Christ est arrivé dans le monde entier.
Salam alaikum. Je suis de la République démocratique du Congo et la question que j'ai amenée avec moi du Congo est la suivante. L'homme est-il éternel ou non? Parce que d'un côté, il survivra après sa mort et de l'autre côté, Allah déclare déjà que tout passera et il ne restera que lui.
Mr. Saidi Alijani from the Congo. His question is that in the Holy Quran, in Surah Ar-Rahman, in the verse 27 and 28, it's stated, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويبقى وجه ربك كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. So all that is on it will pass away, and there will remain only the person of thy Lord, Master of glory and honor. So will man be really eternal? Or according to what the Quran says, will man disappear one day to leave only the person of God in
Nothing
eternity?
is eternal except God. There is no question about that. Everything is bound to come to an end at last. Even the scientists have calculated the age of this world. One day it must come to an end. Protons will come to an end. Everything will come to an end, except God, our Lord. But there may be other forms of life here on earth, as long as the last doomsday does not occur. When the last doomsday comes, which will destroy everything on the earth, before that, man will be destroyed long before, in fact. Man will be brought to an end as a species. And a new species of life will come to replace mankind. So I'm talking of a very long time in future, before what we call doomsday. Doomsday is the day when Earth is finished as a planet. Earth is destroyed as a host to life on Earth. It is what the verse which he speaks of refers to that time.
Jazakumullah. Hazur, I think he also meant that after death, will man be eternal or not?
Nothing is eternal which has no eternal past. See? So what we call death is a change. Nothing is eternal which has changed. So they live, whatever lives on the strength of its God's will. As long as God wills it to live, it will live. So that which lives on somebody else is not eternal. So the life form, whatever it would be in the end, would be entirely dependent on God's will. As such, the one who supports is eternal. One who is supported is not eternal. When he drops it, the non-eternal will fall to pieces, nothingness.
Sa sainteté le calife dit que Dieu seul est éternel. Toute chose doit arriver à une fin, à sa fin un jour ou l'autre. Les scientifiques eux-mêmes ont démontré que le monde arrivera certainement à sa fin. Par exemple, on sait que les protons ont une vie bien déterminée et qu'un jour ils seront détruits, ils n'existeront plus. Avant que ce dernier jour dont on a parlé, ça sera la destruction du monde, la destruction de l'univers, l'homme en tant qu'espèce sera déjà détruit depuis bien longtemps. Et il aura déjà été remplacé par une nouvelle espèce. Et ce n'est qu'après tout cela que viendra cette destruction finale, donc le dernier jour tel qu'on le connaît, le grand cataclysme. Et c'est à ce jour-là que se réfère ce verset. Ce verset parle de cette destruction finale, comme quoi il ne restera plus rien de vivant dans ce monde, il ne restera plus que Dieu. Mais donc on a rajouté un petit morceau concernant la vie après la mort. Qu'arrivera-t-il à l'homme? Restera-t-il éternel dans l'autre vie ou pas? Le calife dit qu'en fait, rien n'est éternel qui doit dépendre d'un autre être. Et rien n'est éternel qui n'a pas de passé éternel. C'est une chose, cette création restera vivante. Et lorsque Dieu va lâcher cette création, elle va sombrer dans le néant. Elle va cesser d'exister. Donc en fait, ce que le calife voulait dire, c'est que Dieu est la seule chose qui soit éternelle et tous les autres dépendent de la volonté d'Allah et ils ne sont pas éternels.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Adam Moaz Koulibaly, je viens de la Côte d'Ivoire. Ma question est la suivante. Quelle explication scientifique et islamique peut-on donner pour la connaissance des chiffres, c'est-à-dire ilm al-adad?
This question comes from Mr. Adam Moaz Koulibaly from Ivory Coast. His question is, what scientific explanation could we give to the ilm al-adad, the knowledge of figures? What's the truth behind this explanation?
It all depends on who is employing this knowledge and whether his employment of the knowledge is right or wrong. Some people are dedicated to the figures and they go on calculating things from this and that and they lose common sense on the way to the understanding of figures. So the figures become everything for them. But there are figures which are supported by the Holy Quran, which are supported by the internal logic of the figures. They must be right, and the Holy Quran speaks of adad and their meaningfulness, and muqatta'at themselves are in fact indicative of the truth of adad. So some interpretations of muqatta'at deal with the number of the letters which they contain. So it's a very big question as to where the people are right and where the people are wrong. But I have given you the principle. Whenever the figures are supported by the Quran or by the internal logic of figures themselves, then they should be accepted, otherwise they should be ruled out. They should not be given over much importance. Most certainly not. Because if the Quran meant to give them over much importance, the figures should have been apparent and clear. It's not for a scholar, it should not have been for a scholar to be born after 1400 years and start studying the figures and its significance. These are things which are very specially addressed to in the intellectuals, the different types of people in the world. The Quran has very plain verses which have apparent meaning, which is understandable by all. But then it has many higher tiers of meanings. And some of the Quran is in fact addressed to very scholarly people, to convince them of the truth of the Quran. So figures generally deal with those people. When they find any meaningfulness to some figures, through them the rest of the world also knows.
Le calife dit que cette science des chiffres, la connaissance des chiffres, dépend de la personne qui l'utilise, justement. Donc, pour juger de la justesse ou de la droiture dans cette science, il faut savoir comment on va l'utiliser. Il y a des gens qui se dédient aux seuls chiffres et ils ne voient que des chiffres partout. Et donc, ils perdent le véritable sens des événements, des incidents qui se passent dans le monde. Certains chiffres, certainement, comportent une logique. Et le Saint-Coran lui-même parle d'adad, donc des chiffres, et les muqatta'at, ou les abréviations que l'on retrouve au début de certaines sourates dans le Saint-Coran, ont trait aux chiffres selon la valeur numérique des lettres qui s'y trouvent. Il est donc difficile de juger pour savoir si ce que la personne dit sur ces chiffres ou pas est juste, mais le calife dit: je vous ai donné une règle générale, il ne faut pas donner trop d'importance aux chiffres, car si le Saint-Coran voulait mettre en valeur les seuls chiffres, eh bien les chiffres on les verrait de façon très clairement énoncés dans ces feuilles, ce qui n'est pas le cas. Donc le calife dit aussi que ce n'est pas à l'homme de venir 1400 ans après le saint prophète sallallahu alayhi wa sallam et de dire que maintenant je vais commencer à étudier les chiffres et vous dire ce que voulaient dire ces choses depuis toutes ces années que personne n'a pu comprendre. Non. Il faut savoir que le Coran comporte deux différents types de versets. Il comporte des versets qui peuvent être compris par tous, par les gens du commun des mortels, et ces versets-là peuvent les convaincre de sa vérité, de sa véracité. Par contre, il comporte aussi certains versets qui traitent justement des chiffres qui peuvent attirer l'esprit des intellectuels qui ont la capacité de comprendre ce que cela dit et d'être impressionnés par la véracité et la logique que contiennent ces chiffres. Et ainsi, ils peuvent bénéficier de la véracité du Saint-Coran et faire bénéficier aussi tout un peuple derrière eux. Donc en fait, il ne faut pas donner trop d'importance aux chiffres et il faut donc suivre ce principe comme l'a énoncé le calife.
Yes. Bashir's son, huh? And what's your own name?
Bachir Bilal Aval.
Hein?
Bilal Aval.
Right, please.
J'ai une question qui provient de la Côte d'Ivoire. Que dit l'islam à propos de la sorcellerie, qui est un problème grave en Afrique?
This question comes from Ivory Coast as well, and it's that what does Islam say about witchcraft, which is a very grave problem these days in Africa?
Witchcraft is mostly a knowledge of things which are harmful to the people, but that knowledge is not commonly known. Most of the witch doctors have studied various harmful herbs and the effect of snake poisons and this and that, which they can administer to people whom they want to scare or whom they want to hurt in a manner that it is not suspected that this poison is being given. Some poisons have a belated effect. They are given, but you do not feel any effect at all at the time that you take it. After a few days, it begins to work. So there are many such poisons who have belated effect on the human body, which are plentiful in Africa. In herbal treatment, they are used, as well as in herbal, negative effect of herbs. It is also used. So the witch doctors are mostly those who specialize in this science. And when they want to hurt somebody and declare that this will happen, that will happen, and that will happen, they in fact read the effect of those poisons beforehand, and after administering it to their enemy, they begin to speak of what will happen to him. It's like the opiate which was taken by Socrates. They knew what would happen to him. Socrates knew what would happen to him. He in fact recorded every effect of the opiate, which gradually developed. So these people are evil people. They make benefit out of their knowledge of herbal injurious effects. And they want to punish their enemies. They want to help their friends. Whoever pays them will benefit from their evil so-called magic. Apart from this material employment of herbs, etc., there is no direct knowledge which they can possess which has a direct effect on their subjects.
Sa sainteté répond que la sorcellerie est une connaissance de choses nuisibles aux gens, et c'est une connaissance qui est très peu connue. Il y a très peu de personnes qui partagent cette connaissance. En fait, les sorciers étudient les plantes vénéneuses qu'ils vont utiliser pour faire peur aux gens. Ils vont les administrer aux gens et ils savent quels seront les effets de ces plantes sur ces gens. Certaines plantes, dit le calife, ont un effet retardé, un effet tardif chez l'homme. Et elles peuvent être utilisées pour, par exemple, le traitement médicinal par les plantes, mais aussi à d'autres fins. les sorciers ou marabouts utilisent cette science, donc ils étudient tout d'abord l'effet qu'ont ces poisons chez l'homme, ensuite ils administrent ce poison d'une façon quelconque à la personne contre laquelle ils veulent du mal, et après ils commencent à prédire, voilà ce qui va arriver à la personne, il aura ce mal, il aura cette maladie, etc. Et cela se passe, et donc les gens les croient. Mais en fait, ce n'est qu'une science des plantes et ce n'est pas plus que cela. Tout comme dans le cas de Socrate, dit le calife, les dérivés de l'opium qu'on utilisait donc contre lui, il savait très bien ce qui lui arriverait s'il prenait cela. Donc il avait étudié cette science. Et comme lui, les autres aussi peuvent étudier cette science. Quiconque aidera ces sorciers pourra bénéficier de ces sens, de cette science, mais ceux qui vont être contre les sorciers ou les marabouts, ils pourront utiliser cette science contre eux. Donc à part la connaissance de ces plantes, cette connaissance ne va pas plus loin que cela, et elle se limite à la seule connaissance de ces plantes empoisonnées, et c'est tout ce qu'il y a dans la sorcellerie en fait.
They also have their agents employed everywhere, who are unknown to others, to give him the inside information of the family and what goes on.
Le calife dit que les sorciers emploient aussi des agents qui sont postés partout et qui les informent de ce qui se passe chez telle ou telle famille. Et c'est ainsi que les sorciers peuvent prédire, soi-disant, des choses ou deviner des choses, alors qu'en fait, ils reçoivent ces informations à travers ces agents.
Assalamu alaikum. Je m'appelle Ashadi Simda.
Loudly, please.
Un peu plus fort.
A bit louder.
Je m'appelle Ashadi Simda et j'ai une question provenant du Zaïre. Pourquoi certaines prières sont récitées à haute voix et d'autres silencieusement?
The question is from the Congo. Why are certain prayers recited loudly and others silently?
I have already answered this question many a time before. It tallies with the human nature. At the time when the human nature requires songs and music and, you know, musical expressions and things, during those times the prayer is recited loudly. There are times when things go quiet, even the birds go quiet in the middle of the day and before till the time of Asr, and the prayers are silent there. So the prayers are in keeping with the human and animal nature.
Sa sainteté le calife dit que j'ai déjà répondu à cette question plusieurs fois. En fait, les prières sont récitées certaines à haute voix et d'autres silencieusement, puisque cela est en accord parfait avec la nature humaine. On voit qu'il y a des moments où l'homme, de par sa nature, a besoin de musique, il a besoin d'expression musicale. Et il y a d'autres moments où il a besoin de silence. On voit que dans la nature même, il y a des moments où le silence tombe, où même les oiseaux deviennent complètement silencieux. On voit par exemple que jusqu'à l'heure de Asr, on n'entend pas les oiseaux, ils deviennent silencieux. Et de la même façon, les prières seront récitées silencieusement. Donc les prières aussi suivent la nature que Dieu a façonnée pour l'homme.
Je suis le fils de Dr Zafar, j'habite à Londres. Je lisais récemment un livre très intéressant écrit par...
Where's your microphone? Please repeat your question.
Je lisais...
Répétez votre question.
Répétez votre question. Right.
Je lisais récemment un livre intéressant écrit par un savant non-ahmadi à propos des noms de Dieu. Dans la préface, il dit qu'il y a 99 noms d'Allah, mais il disait que ce point était disputable et que peut-être qu'il y avait plus ou moins de 99 noms. Je voulais savoir quel est le nombre exact des noms de Dieu. Aussi, est-ce que chacun de ces noms est mentionné dans le Saint-Coran? Aussi, après chaque nom dans le livre, il disait qu'il faut le répéter un certain nombre de fois pour que, si on veut que certaines choses se passent, par exemple, si on veut que son enfant rentre chez soi sain et sauf après un voyage, il faut répéter un certain nom 100 fois pendant une semaine. Est-ce que nous on croit dans une telle pratique? Aussi, je voulais savoir si on peut remplacer un nom quelconque de Dieu dans une prière. C'est-à-dire, est-ce qu'on peut remplacer le mot Allah avec un certain de ses noms pour si on veut faire l'éloge d'un certain de ses attributs?
So this question is from Mr. Umair Zafar, son of Dr. Zafar Sahib. And he said that I read a book recently written by a non-Ahmadi scholar in which it was mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 99 names, but maybe there might be more, maybe there might be less. So he wanted to know what's the exact number of names of Allah. Also, in the Holy Quran it was said that certain names in this same book, that certain names of Allah can be used to be repeated in prayers, especially for example, for certain different problems or something, to remove those problems, we should choose one specific name of Allah to be repeated again and again. Do we believe in this kind of practice or not? And can we replace the name of Allah when we're praying in the Salat? Instead of saying Allah, can we use those other names of Allah in the Salat?
Take the question one by one after the other.
The first one is...
questions, in fact.
Yes. The first part is, does Allah have 99 names? What is the exact number of Allah's names? And all in the Quran.
Allah has so many names that you do not know, cannot count. But to the five senses which we possess, He appears in a way that we can understand Him. He is not limited. Our understanding is limited. So if the names are 99 or 101, it's irrelevant. The question is, God has manifested Himself to man with limited faculties. It would be the faculties of man which will determine how God can make Himself manifest to him. He can't make Him manifest to mankind beyond their capacity to understand. If you begin to show your face to a blind man and say, look here, how beautiful I am, look at my nose, look at my eyes, what can he do? Nothing. So you have all those attributes of your figure, which are so many. Your shape, your form, your color, your pimples, your birthmarks, and this and that, and the strength of your body or the weakness of your body, and you may be overbent because of the weakness of your spinal cord and things. There are hundreds of possibilities which are related just to the sight. And you cannot display yourself to a man who does not possess sight. So similarly, Allah does not display Himself uselessly and meaninglessly to a people who have limited faculties of senses, that is five senses. But when you die, your senses will be sharpened, and you may have been gifted with some new senses. Then Allah will appear to you with His new attributes and new manifestations, will in fact be showered upon you in a manner that you can't even dream. That's the answer to the first question.
Pour répondre à la première question, Sa Sainteté le Calife dit que Allah a tant de noms qu'on ne pourrait même les compter. On ne peut concevoir de pouvoir les compter. Et les noms que Dieu nous a révélés sont les noms qui peuvent être compris par les cinq sens humains, les cinq sens que l'homme possède. Et il peut apparaître devant ses sens selon les noms qu'il a donnés. Qu'il ait 99 ou plus ou moins, cela n'a pas d'importance. Ce qui compte, ce qu'il faut savoir, c'est que de par ses facultés, l'homme est limité dans les manifestations qu'il peut comprendre de Dieu, qu'il peut comprendre à travers ses sens, parce qu'il a des sens limités. Par exemple, dit le calife, pour illustrer, si vous montrez votre visage à un aveugle, eh bien, vous pouvez lui dire, regardez ma forme, regardez ma couleur, regardez toutes les marques que porte mon corps, toutes ces belles choses que comporte le corps, il ne pourra pas les voir. Alors que toutes ces choses s'adressent donc au sens de la vue. Mais puisqu'il n'a pas ce sens, cela ne voudra rien dire pour lui. De même, Dieu ne se manifestera pas inutilement devant un peuple qui ne possède pas les sens requis pour pouvoir comprendre et assimiler cette manifestation qui est sienne. Après la mort, par contre, vos sens, dit le calife, seront aiguisés. Et alors vous commencerez à voir des choses, à percevoir des choses que vous ne pouviez pas savoir avant cela. Et donc vous ne pouvez pas voir de Dieu ou comprendre Dieu au-delà des sens que Dieu vous a accordés. The second part of the question was in the Holy Quran, certain names, it's been stated in this book that Umar read, can be recited repeatedly to ward off certain evils or remove problems. Do we believe in this?
The repetition of any names cannot by itself ward off any evil. But the repetition of certain names can give you strength to concentrate on the meaning of those names. Each attribute of Allah is apparently single, but when you concentrate on it and you repeat it, new meanings may appear before your sight, before your vision, like you move the kaleidoscope, give it different twists and new figures appear before your sight. Similarly, the repetition of the names or attributes of Allah is in fact designed to create that effect on your mind. Ar-Rahman being repeated in the sense that Rahman covers the whole of the universe. The word Rahman apparently is a single attribute. It covers the whole history of the evolution, whole history of mankind, whole history of creation, the whole history of God's relationship with man and so on and so forth. I mean, you cannot exhaust this attribute alone throughout your life if you go on repeating it. So the purpose of repetition of Allah's attributes is to enlarge their meanings to yourself. Although the meanings they already contain are enlarged beyond our imagination, but to your own vision, you enlarge the meaning of those attributes by repeating them. And with the grace of Allah, the more you know of Rahman, the more in contact you come with Rahman. So for any specific problem, when you repeat any attribute of Allah, this has to be the purpose, and this is the only useful purpose. Otherwise, by repeating them like a parrot, it would not serve any cause.
Huzur nous dit que la répétition de nom de Dieu ou de n'importe quel autre nom d'ailleurs ne peut éloigner les mots, quels qu'ils soient. Cela n'est pas correct. Chaque attribut d'Allah possède un sens premier, mais si vous y réfléchissez en répétant donc le nom d'une bonne façon, eh bien de nouveaux sens commenceront à surgir dans votre esprit. Vous commencerez à voir de nouveaux aspects de ce même attribut. C'est comme quand on regarde dans un kaléidoscope, eh bien si on tourne un peu le kaléidoscope, on voit la même chose mais d'un autre angle. Donc on voit différents aspects de la même image. Donc répéter l'attribut de Rahman, il faut savoir que si vous voulez répéter un tel attribut, cet attribut à lui seul recouvre tout l'univers, ça recouvre toute l'histoire de l'homme. C'est une chose qui est très très large dans son application. Même si vous répétez cet attribut de Rahman toute votre vie, vous ne pourrez pas cerner tous les sens de Rahman, voir tous les côtés que comporte cet attribut. Donc ce qu'il vous faut faire, c'est d'essayer d'élargir le sens de ces attributs dans votre esprit, et au fur et à mesure que vous progressez dans la connaissance de ce seul attribut, par exemple de Rahman, eh bien par la grâce d'Allah, vous commencerez à vous approcher de plus en plus de ce Dieu Rahman. Donc il faut savoir que répéter seulement comme un perroquet, cela ne vous emmènera à rien. Il faut répéter les choses en essayant de les comprendre et d'en trouver les sens plus profonds. The last part of the question was, can we use the names of instead of using the name of Allah, may we replace this name by other attributes of Allah during the salat, while we're praying to Allah for certain things?
During the salat, wherever Allah is mentioned, Allah has to be spoken of. It's Allah who decides how we should address Him in salat. Having done that, afterwards, for your own private requirements, you may concentrate on other attributes of Allah, but the main body of salat has the repetition of the word Allah, which is not only the personal name of Allah, but also it is a name which is so highly loved by Allah. that it contains all his attributes, one symbol of all his attributes, because it may have also been derived from Al-Ilah, the worthy of worship, the only thing worthy of worship. And it gradually might have become one word, or may not gradually, but that might have been the philosophy of this word in the making of this name Allah. But throughout the history we know him to be Allah and nothing else. He appeared to Adam as Allah. He appeared to angels as Allah. He appeared to all the prophets as Allah. And in the letter of the Solomon, you find this word meant Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. These are the very words in quotes. So Allah is an attribute for which you find no sense at all for it to be replaced. No man, when he has access to this grand manifestation of Allah's attributes all put in one word, no man with his sanity would replace it with other things.
Le calife dit que dans notre prière, dans la salat, là où Allah, le nom d'Allah est mentionné, c'est Allah lui-même, Dieu lui-même qui a voulu que son nom, Allah, soit mentionné là, et nous ne pouvons pas changer cela. Par contre, après les prières prescrites, à l'intérieur de la prière, dans ces places où nous pouvons adresser nos prières personnelles, il est permissible d'utiliser les autres attributs d'Allah. Mais le corps principal de la salat est recouvert par le nom d'Allah, et c'est ainsi qu'il faut qu'il reste. Ce nom est celui qui est le plus cher à Dieu. Le nom Allah représente tous les attributs de Dieu. C'est un seul nom qui représente tous ses attributs. Et le calife dit peut-être le mot est-il dérivé de Al-Ilah, qui signifie le seul être digne d'adoration. À part lui, il n'y a aucun autre. C'est le nom que nous voyons à travers l'histoire qui surgit lorsque Dieu s'adresse à Adam, il s'adresse à lui en tant qu'Allah. Lorsqu'il s'adresse aux anges, la même chose. Et lorsqu'il s'adresse à tous les prophètes du monde, il s'est toujours adressé à eux en disant « Je suis Allah ». On voit aussi dans la lettre de Salomon, par exemple, alayhi salam, dans le Saint-Coran, qu'il commence sa lettre par « Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim » au nom d'Allah, le gracieux, le miséricordieux. Donc Allah est un attribut qui ne peut être remplacé car il représente tous les attributs de Dieu et aucun homme saint d'esprit ne voudra remplacer ce qui représente tous les attributs par quelque chose qui ne représente qu'un attribut ou deux.
Cette question vient de M. Djihangir. Compte tenu de la pauvreté, est-ce qu'un péché que d'avoir beaucoup d'enfants alors que ces enfants ne vont naître que pour la souffrance?
A little correction to be made. This question does not come from Mr. Jahangir, it comes from the Congo.
Oh, yes. Congo.
The question is, because of poverty, is it a sin to have many children because you're going to make them be born into suffering? Is it a sin to know that before they're born they're going to be suffering, so why let them be born at all?
It is a sin not to let them be born. The opposite is true. Because God has designed the system of provision and the system of reproduction. It's an ill reflection on God to believe that He has given you an imbalanced system of reproduction and provision. And the history tells us that exactly the opposite is true. The poor families which have more children, they become rich ultimately. Children are born with their own fate, in fact. And those who have small number of children, it does not influence their economy at all. Sometimes the child falls ill and is destroyed and all your property goes to the state. So there's so many things involved in this system of reproduction and the system of provision which should not be touched by man. let Allah work, and I've spoken volumes on this subject. I've spoken with regard to the history of mankind moving from one area to another, history of migration, history of poor people becoming rich by moving on to other richer areas, and so on and so forth. So all these things are deeply related to this question, and man should not touch them. He should follow the nature as it is revealed for you, but only for the sake of health and other certain important things. Man is permitted to have birth control, not otherwise.
Sa sainteté le calife dit qu'en fait, ne pas laisser naître ses enfants est un péché. Donc le contraire est vrai. Dieu a créé un système de reproduction et c'est un péché que de croire que Dieu a créé un système de reproduction qui n'est pas balancé. C'est tout à fait balancé avec tous les autres besoins de l'homme. Les enfants pauvres, souvent on voit qu'ils deviennent riches. Donc qui peut savoir si les enfants vont continuellement souffrir? Et on voit que ceux qui n'ont que très peu d'enfants, par exemple 1 ou 2 enfants, eh bien ces enfants n'influencent pas beaucoup leur économie, car parfois à cause de la maladie, un enfant ou même les deux peuvent être détruits. Et donc tous les biens du couple ira à l'État. Il faut laisser faire à Allah son travail. J'ai parlé beaucoup et souvent, dit le calife, à ce sujet, et j'ai mentionné par exemple les migrations des populations d'un pays à l'autre, de régions pauvres vers les régions riches. Tout cela est très important pour maintenir une bonne balance dans le monde entier. Cela est le travail de Dieu et l'homme ne doit pas y toucher, excepté que pour des raisons de santé ou d'autres raisons très donc valables. Il peut alors utiliser, comme on l'appelle, la contraception, le planning familial, mais sinon il faut laisser donc à Allah faire son travail, laisser le cours des choses se passer comme il se doit.
Also, cette question vient aussi de la République démocratique du Congo. Elle est stipulée comme si, Allah étant Rahman, quelles explications donner à ces souffrances et malheurs endurcis chez certaines populations d'Afrique notamment? C'est ça la question.
This question comes from the Jamaat of Congo also, and it's that since Allah is Rahman, then how do we explain the fact that certain types of suffering and problems have persisted in populations of Africa, for example?
Not Africa alone, everywhere in the world. You see, when you break your tie with Rahman, how can the benefits of Rahmaniyat flow towards you? All the problems stem from this error of man breaking his ties with Rahman. Rahman will not force his beneficence upon you if you turn away from him. And that is what the mankind has done. On this subject I can speak for hours, but I know most certainly that the fault lies with the man who breaks away from Rahman and not on Rahman, because he has created a system of, well, if you like, you can commune with him. If you do not like, you may not. Like the sun, for instance, is a symbol of Rahmaniyat. It's for all the world. It brightens and lightens everything. But if you shut your eyes, if you shut your doors, whose fault will it be?
Sa sainteté le calife nous dit qu'en fait il ne s'agit pas seulement de l'Afrique mais le monde entier. Dans le monde entier il y a des gens qui souffrent, qui sont dans la souffrance qui persiste. Il dit que si vous brisez vos liens avec le Dieu Rahman, le Dieu gracieux, comment pouvez-vous alors espérer pouvoir continuer à bénéficier des faveurs qui viennent de cet attribut de Rahman? Le Dieu Rahman, le Dieu gracieux, ne forcera pas ses faveurs sur vous. Il ne vous les imposera pas. Si donc vous voulez en profiter, il faut maintenir votre relation avec lui. Donc le calife dit, je pourrais bien sûr en parler pendant des heures et des heures, mais je dois dire tout simplement que la faute donc retombe sur l'homme. C'est l'homme qui a brisé son rapport avec Dieu. Si l'homme veut communier avec Dieu, il pourra communier, mais s'il ne le veut pas, il s'en privera. C'est comme le soleil. Le soleil brille sur le monde entier, se lève sur le monde entier. Tout le monde peut en profiter de différentes façons, mais le soleil est là pour tous. Mais si quelqu'un veut s'enfermer dans sa maison, qu'il ferme ses fenêtres, qu'il ferme ses volets, ses portes, il ne veut pas voir le soleil. Et alors après il dit, mais je ne vois pas le soleil, je n'en profite pas. À qui incombera la faute? cette faute retombera sur l'homme qui a agi ainsi. Donc c'est l'homme qui est en tort, l'homme a coupé sa relation et c'est pour ça que les gens souffrent.
A very simple answer which is understandable by everyone is this, that if you are Rahman to others, God will be Rahman to you. If you are not Rahman to others, then you break away your ties. This is the meaning of breaking your ties with Rahman. If you're cruel, beastly, selfish to all around, to the mankind as such, how can God show His Rahmaniyat through you or without you? Because everybody else is behaving the same way. So the problems which you bring upon the mankind are the problems which are created by your not being Rahman. This is the meaning of breaking away your ties with Rahmaniyat.
Une réponse très simple que l'on pourrait donner pour cette question et que tous pourraient comprendre, c'est que si vous êtes vous-même gracieux, donc Rahman envers les autres, Dieu le sera aussi avec vous. Mais si vous êtes cruel, vous êtes bestial, vous êtes méchant envers les autres, et tout le monde se comporte ainsi, comment Dieu va-t-il alors montrer sa grâce à un tel peuple dont tous les membres se comportent ainsi? Donc il faut que vous soyez gracieux vous-même pour attirer la grâce, les faveurs de Dieu gracieux qui est Ar-Rahman.
La deuxième question est la suivante. Pour notre facilité, la loi islamique facilite pour un voyageur de réduire la prière, ils sont 4 en voyage. Je donne un exemple. Par exemple, nous voyageons par mois, nous pouvons faire 25 jours et les 5 jours on peut faire la mission, c'est-à-dire pour établir la tarbiyat. Bon, en tant que missionnaire qui a dédié sa vie, est-ce que toujours nous devons réduire la prière ou bien nous devons compléter la prière?
So the question relates to the actual fieldwork that Mr. Adam Moaz Coulibaly is into these days. He says that the Sharia allows us to reduce the prayers if we're if we're traveling.
Voyage.
Yes, on voyage. Yes. He said, but we find it that many a time we're on voyage for 25 days in the month. So we're traveling around the country, not stopping in any place for more than a day or two, and maybe we'll spend just 5 days at the mission. So is it permissible for us to continue reducing the prayers while we're on such a trip for the Tabligh or Talbiyah or not?
You see, it all depends on your posting. If your posting is on a travel business, then you can't reduce your prayers during your travels, because they are part of your profession. But if your posting is that of a Muallim, you may or may not travel. You may travel on certain missions, you may not travel otherwise in the same month. Then it's a different question altogether. The fact is, this reduction by Allah is related to many factors. Some of them is shortage of time. Some of them are the discomfort which is attached to the voyage. Right? Now, if these things have changed by your posting in an area where you move on from place to place, then you may not do the qasr at all. But if they remain the same as they ever were, if the discomfort of the journey and the travel day in and day out is with you throughout, you suffer from it continuously, then why should you cease to say qasr at all? See? So read the Quran with attention and you will find that Hazrat Masih Maud has explained things in just the right manner. Hazrat Masih Maud says it's Allah who grants His mercy upon you, who wants you to benefit from that mercy. If you refuse to benefit from that mercy, you will not be pleasing God. You'll be playing God. You can't please God forcibly. So do it as Allah wants. But if you feel that you have more time for prayer, then you can add more number of nawafil during such journeys. There are times when Hazrat Masih Maud remained uncertain during a lawsuit against him at Gurdaspur. He did not know when it will finish. He remained there about 6 months in the same state of uncertainty. And he continued to say his prayer in Qasr. But when you know that your time, the place where you are visiting, you will stay there for more than 14 days. You will continue to say 4 times full prayers without Qasr. Because your knowledge is that you've gone there to stay put for at least 2 weeks. So, if you are certain that you are staying for 2 weeks, even if you leave within 3 days, the prayer will not be Qasr. But if your intention is to stay somewhere for 3 or 4 days, even if you extend it to a full month, the prayer will be Qasr. So these are minor details, but you should, as a Muallim, keep all these in mind. Not minor, minute details, not minor, but as a Muallim, you should keep them in your mind.
Sa Sainteté le Calife nous dit que tout dépend de la nature de votre travail. Si votre travail comporte un voyage perpétuel, alors vous n'avez pas le droit de réduire les prières, puisque c'est la condition dans laquelle vous vous trouvez toujours. Si par contre vous avez été nommé en tant que muallim, donc un éducateur de la Jamaat, qui ne voyage pas nécessairement tout le temps, dans ce cas-là, lorsque vous serez en voyage, vous pourrez réduire les prières, faire la prière Qasr. Donc les raisons pour lesquelles la prière est réduite, sont surtout le manque de temps et le manque de confort. Mais si ces deux choses restent les mêmes, donc si vous êtes toujours en train de travailler, vous avez toujours peu de temps, toujours peu de confort, votre situation est toujours la même. Il n'y a pas une diminution dans ces choses, et dans une telle condition, vous devez continuellement offrir vos prières normalement et ne pas les réduire. Mais si ces choses changent, alors vous devez les réduire. Le calife dit que lisez le Coran avec attention et vous verrez que le Messie premier alayhi salam a bien explicité ces choses. Dieu vous accorde sa grâce. Si vous refusez d'en bénéficier, vous ne plairez pas à Allah. Dieu vous permet, lorsque vous êtes dans des situations difficiles qui ne sont pas normales, des situations anormales, de réduire les prières. Et donc c'est une grâce. Si vous refusez de le faire et vous continuez à faire vos prières normalement, cela ne fera pas plaisir à Allah. Au contraire, cela attirera plutôt son courroux. Mais par contre, si vous trouvez après le temps, pendant le voyage, du temps supplémentaire, vous pouvez, tout en réduisant vos prières, vous pouvez y rajouter des prières nawafil. Parce que tout à coup, vous trouvez du temps pour se faire, vous pouvez le faire. Il faut savoir que le Messie premier, alayhi salam, il y a eu des moments où il était dans un état d'incertitude au sujet d'un procès qui avait lieu en cours. Et il resta dans cette incertitude, on ne savait pas quand il allait être appelé, quand il devait en sortir. Donc il a continuellement fait ses prières en Qasr pendant jusqu'à 6 mois. Donc cela est possible. Mais dès qu'il a su que la condition est devenue normale, il a repris ses prières normales. Si par exemple vous savez que vous allez habiter dans une place pendant plus de 14 jours, dans ce cas-là, vos prières dès le premier jour seront normales. Il n'y aura pas de Qasr du tout. Même si vous laissez la place, vous rentrez chez vous après 3 jours, avec l'intention de rester pour 14 jours, mais vous rentrez avant, vous allez quand même faire des prières normales. Mais si par exemple vous alliez vous rendre à une place pour y passer seulement quelques jours, donc moins de 14 jours, et que plus tard vous allez l'étendre à 1 mois, vous êtes dans l'incertitude, vous ne savez pas quand vous allez partir, dans ce cas-là, toutes vos prières seront en Qasr. Donc ce sont des petits détails comme cela que les muallim et les missionnaires sur le terrain, qu'ils doivent garder en tête, il faut qu'ils les connaissent bien pour les enseigner aux autres.
Sometimes people who do Qasr all much, they feel a bit satiated with it, they want to change. So when they reach home, they feel at rest, because then they start saying prayers full time. My advice to them is that there is no harm whatsoever in appointing an imam who is local and to say your prayer behind that imam. In that way, you will be able to, without disregard to Allah's mercy, you will be able to say full prayers as well.
Le calife dit qu'il y a des gens qui n'aiment pas faire la prière Qasr et lorsqu'ils ont fini leur voyage et qu'ils rentrent chez eux, ils sont très contents parce qu'ils peuvent retourner à la prière normale. Mais le calife dit pour ne pas faire fi des bénédictions que Dieu vous a données, de ces grâces qu'il vous a montrées pour réduire les prières, il n'y a aucun mal si, lorsque vous vous rendez quelque part en voyage, que vous fassiez quelqu'un de la localité, quelqu'un de local, diriger la prière et ainsi vous pourrez profiter de la prière normale et ne pas bafouer les injonctions de Dieu en plus.
J'ai une question qui provient du Bénin. Le chapitre 17, verset 83, mentionne que le Coran comporte une guérison pour les croyants. Comment pouvons-nous utiliser le Coran pour guérir les maux physiques?
The question comes from Benin. And it's that in the Holy Quran Allah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So we are gradually revealing of the Quran that which is a healing and a mercy to the believers. How can we use the Holy Quran to cure people of their physical ailments?
You cannot make a profession out of it anyway, because that will be selling the Quran. If you know any verse which has a beneficial effect on some disease, you may use it as a prayer. But the Holy Quran is not a system of medicine, physical medicine I mean. It does not replace allopathy or homeopathy. It is a system of spiritual cure. But it also happens to cure physically some people who are ill. Otherwise, it does not want you to forget about the physical system of cure which God has created. But when you do not have access to that, then sometimes you can use the verses, but only for the beneficial purpose, not for selling these verses by way of adopting this as a profession.
Sa Sainteté le Calife nous répond à cette question en disant que, en tout cas, vous ne pourrez pas en faire une profession. Si vous allez utiliser le Saint-Coran pour guérir les gens, cela équivaudrait à vendre les versets du Saint-Coran. Et cela n'est pas juste. Vous pouvez utiliser certains versets du Coran comme des prières. Et lorsque vous avez vu que ces prières sont bénéfiques, vous pourrez en parler aux autres aussi pour qu'ils en bénéficient. Mais il faut savoir que le Saint-Coran n'est certainement pas un bouquin sur la médecine, et c'est un livre surtout qui s'adresse aux maladies spirituelles, c'est pour traiter les maladies spirituelles. Mais le Coran rappelle à l'homme certaines façons de guérir les maladies physiques et rappelle à l'homme son devoir envers cela.
First class.
Exact.
Excellent, exact. MashaAllah. Salam.
Wa alaykum salam.
ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين. Long live Khilafat, long live Ahmadiyya, long live Khilafat, long live Ahmadiyya.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hazrat Sayyadi Wulde Adam Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. أفضل وأكرم صلى الله عليه وسلم नाम मोहम्मद काम मुकर्रम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम हादी कामिल रहबर आज़म सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम.
From a succession of 124,000 noble prophets of God, one prophet was foreseen to appear, who would rise far higher in rank than any of his predecessors. A prophet who would fulfill his destined role as the promised savior of mankind. A prophet who would encapsulate the most revered title as the seal of the prophets. The date was 610 AD. In the cave of Hira, situated within the Arabian Peninsula, Hazrat Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, began the journey of fulfilling his role as the greatest prophet of mankind. After he experienced the first revelation, his instinctive reaction was one of solemn humility. He became agitated and restless. He had been propelled into a sphere that he had never imagined, and it caused him great distress. He returned home to his wife, Hazrat Khadija, shaking and trembling. She immediately tried to comfort him, and to reassure him further, she suggested they consult her cousin, Waraka bin Nawfal. Now an old and blind man, he was well versed in holy scriptures and had discarded paganism to become a Christian. On hearing the Holy Prophet's miraculous account, Waraka bin Nawfal responded with conviction. The angel who descended on Moses has descended upon you. He also told him that he would have to present himself to his people and warned him that it would not be easy.
आपके जलवाए हुस्न के आगे शर्म से नूरों वाले भागे मेहरो माह ने तोड़ दिया दम वसल्लम एक जलवे में आनन फानन भर दिया आलम कर दिए रोशन उत्तर दक्षिण पूरब पश्चिम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम अव्वल व आखिर शारे खातम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम.
He continued to spend his days and nights in the caves, occupied in prayer and meditation. For some time, he stopped receiving revelations and passed this period in great anxiety. But this period of silence was soon to change forever. One day, as he walked back home from the cave, he suddenly heard a voice, as if someone was speaking to him. He looked in all directions, but saw no one. But when he looked up to the sky, he saw a grand chair suspended between the heaven and the earth, on which was seated the same presence whom he had seen in the cave previously. After the presence departed, he rushed home shivering and immediately asked Hazrat Khadija to cover him up. As soon as he lay down, he heard the majestic voice addressing him again. O ye wrapped in the cloak, arise and warn and magnify your Lord. Purify yourself and stamp out idolatry. He was now convinced of his mission, to call people to the oneness of God, and so the message was about to be revealed to the world. When he announced his proclamation, the closest members of his family accepted him immediately. First was his wife, Hazrat Khadija, then Zaid, a slave that the Holy Prophet had freed and raised as his own. His cousin, Ali, the son of Abu Talib, whom he had taken under his care from the age of 5, and finally Hazrat Abu Bakr. A successful merchant of high character and known for his kindness to others, he was a close friend of the Holy Prophet and showed no sign of reluctance in accepting his message. To Hazrat Muhammad's intense disappointment, his uncles Abu Talib, Abbas and Hamza were not interested. Abu Talib, who was the chief of the Hashim tribe, had a lot of regard for his nephew and explained to him that he could not abandon the religion of his forefathers. But he did not prevent his family members making their own choice to follow him.
बंद हुए फान के चश्मे फैज़ के टूट गए पैमाने तब आए वो साकी कौसर मस्त फान पैगंबर पीरे मुगाने बादायत हर मैनोशों की ईद बनाने घिर आई घन घोर घटाए झूम उठी मख मोर हवाएं झुक गया बरे रहमत बारी आबे हयाते नौ बरसाने.
In the first 3 years of secret and quiet preaching, he managed to build up a small group of fervent believers. The Holy Prophet peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, was aware that his claim would threaten the old-fashioned Quraysh, and this was one reason he kept a low profile. In the beginning of the 4th year of his ministry, he started receiving revelations that commanded him to declare himself publicly. O Prophet, the command that has been given to thee, announce it to people clearly and openly. Then he received the revelation, and warn thy nearest kinsman. Hazrat Muhammad was about to attempt the impossible. He wanted every man and woman of Mecca to look for signs of God's goodness and magnificence, evident wherever they looked in the natural world. He wanted them to know that God had created, guided, and preserved the whole order of the universe for their benefit. He stood on Mount Safa and with a loud and pronounced voice called each tribe of the Quraysh by name. When they all gathered, the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, asked them, O Quraysh, if I said a huge army is on the other side ready to attack you, will you believe me? As they knew him to be the most honest and truthful from among them, they immediately said they would. But when he gave the divine message, they all laughed and ridiculed him. Amongst them was Abu Lahab, one of the chiefs of the tribes and an uncle of the Prophet. This did not discourage him. A few days later, he asked Ali to invite about 40 leading men from the tribe of Hashim for a meal. They were relatives of the Holy Prophet and descendants of Abdul Muttalib. After the meal, when he tried to convey the message, Abu Lahab rudely interrupted and eventually broke up the gathering. The Holy Prophet asked Ali to arrange another meal. On this occasion, when he conveyed the message, there was an awkward silence. His uncles, Abu Talib, Hamza and Abbas, all remained quiet. Ali, who was only 11 years old, could not bear this silence and spoke out. I, though the youngest and weak, O Prophet of God, I will be your helper. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, placed his hand on his shoulder and addressed the guests. If you follow him, you will prosper. This insulted the Quraysh. As they got up to leave, Abu Lahab turned to Abu Talib and mocked. Now Muhammad is asking us to follow your son. Then they left without taking heed. The Quraysh were being asked to abandon the religion of their forefathers, a worship of idols. They were not yet ready to accept this new way of life. However, there were many to be found amongst the slaves, the young men, and the tormented, who began to feel alive again. These people had suffered unbelievable oppression. They began to gather around the Holy Prophet for guidance. One of the most famous was Hazrat Bilal, a man owned by Umayyah bin Khalf. He would put hot stones on his chest, urging him to deny the unity of God. But Bilal remained steadfast. After one such ordeal, Bilal was left to the point of death. Hazrat Abu Bakr could not bear to see his companion in such pain. The Holy Prophet instructed him to approach Umayyah and offered to buy his freedom. Bilal later became the first muezzin calling people to prayer.
बस्ती बादा कशों पर छा गई मस्ती एक एक ज़र्फ़ भरा भर खाने एक बरसात करम की पैहम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम.
As more people assembled to listen to the Prophet, Hazrat Muhammad felt the need of a place where the Muslims could gather together for worship and guidance. For this purpose, he chose the house of Arqam, situated on the slopes of Mount Safa. Fierce opposition towards the Prophet and his followers grew, but this did not deter the Muslims. They intensified their efforts to spread the message, and the honourable amongst the Meccans swiftly came into the fold of Islam. This was to cause unease amongst the elders, because their hierarchical system was being shattered. The Meccan chiefs, recognizing that they could not simply beat the Muslims to submission, approached the Prophet's uncle Abu Talib. They told him to dissuade his nephew from preaching his message. In return, they offered to make the Holy Prophet their chief. They offered him wealth and the hand of any woman of his liking. Abu Talib relayed this message to the Holy Prophet, who replied, "I say that even if they were to place the sun on my right hand and the moon on my left, I would not desist from preaching the truth. I must go on doing so until I die. You can choose your own pleasure." Abu Talib replied, "My nephew, go your way. Do your duty. Let my people give me up. I am with you." And the Holy Prophet did exactly that. He continued to spread his message and to fulfill his duty to God. However, the oppression was to continue.
Here's a look at the next few programs on today's schedule. For more information, visit www.mta.tv.
Coming next after the break, Hafiz Fazl Rabi teaches the correct pronunciation of the Holy Quran in Al-Tartil.
Visit MTA Africa's official YouTube channel to catch up on past episodes of your favorite programs. To view all our regular series of programs including documentaries, religious programs, children's programs, current affairs, and many more, visit www.youtube.com/MTA Africa. Click on the playlist section to view the series of your choice. You can find programs in different languages and topics. To watch the Friday sermons and programs of Khalifatul Masih, you can continue to log on to www.mta.tv. MTA Africa's YouTube channel is available on your computer, tablet, or mobile devices, so you can watch our programs anytime, anywhere. MTA Africa's official YouTube channel, now available on all platforms.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Shamsuddin Batin, a student of Jamia Ahmadiyya International. I'm a Ghanaian. It was through my grandfather that the Jamaat entered our family. In 2006, when I completed my senior high school, I wrote to our spiritual leader to join the community, the missionary field of the Jamaat. So I was enrolled in Jamia Ahmadiyya, which I completed in 2009. And when I entered my spirituality, I could see that it has grown up. And then I could understand the true teachings of Islam, and then the true teachings of the Holy Quran, and the sayings of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now I'm in Jamia Ahmadiyya International, furthering my education. And here I could read the writings of the Mahdi directly without translation, which has also risen my spirituality to a certain standard, because what is there, the translations cannot give. The writings, the emotions that in it, the translations in English is not exactly as the man himself wrote. Inshallah, it is our desire that we will complete from here so that we are able to spread the true teachings of Islam and the teachings of the Mahdi, whom all the religions, the Hindus, the Christians, the Muslims are waiting for. And all the signs, as it has been, all the signs had appeared, they are saying he ought to come. And we Ahmadis, we say that he has come in the person of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad.
महा उसानिया अशजले में फे मैं तेरी तबलीग नु दुनिया दे करने तक पहुंचावांगा
इंता तो आमा सान दुनिया कुलनं माना एक बेवला दो अनिबा बें गोगलो पतामे
long live Khilafat, long live Ahmadiyya, long live Khilafat, long live Ahmadiyya.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ورتل القرآن ترتيلا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, this is lesson 29, and this is about Alif Zaida, excessive Alif in between the letters of a word. Now, points to remember that there are some words in the Holy Quran which contains an excessive Alif, Alif Zaida. And there are two kinds of such words. Type 1, where excessive alif comes in between the letters of a word. And the type 2, where an excessive alif comes at the end of a word. And we will practice in the next lesson as well. Now, in terms of pronunciation, there are two categories, two types of such words. Type 1, where an excessive alif must not be recited either in the continuation of recitation or making a pause at such words. And you will see the examples how the pronunciation will take place. And the type 2, where an excessive alif will not be recited if the recitation is continued, but it will be read out if one make a pause at such words. Okay, so there are two categories, two kinds, two types in terms of pronunciation, where excessive alif will not be recited at all, whether in continuation of the recitation or making a pause. And at some places, when we make a pause, then that excessive alif will be recited, otherwise not. Now in this lesson, we shall practice those words where an excessive alif must not be recited. Okay? Remember, such a word may or may not carry a sign of a small cross or a circle. Because when there is an excessive alif, there is a small cross sign over that. Or in some copies of the Holy Quran, a small circle, which is a sign of sukoon. Okay? But it is quite possible that at some places this sign is not there. So we have to remember those words. They are not so much, they are only few. But it is important in terms of pronunciation. And another point is that in most copies of the Holy Quran which are printed in our countries, subcontinent, it is written on the margin as well. So additional information is given on the margin as well. Okay. Now this is one example, excessive alif in between the letters of a word. You can see the first line, the word is afa'in. Now alif with fatha, hamza alif, fa, and then that is excessive alif. And on that excessive alif, which has been highlighted, there is a small circle on that one. And this is an indication and information to us that this excessive alif must not be recited. Okay? It should not be recited like afa'in, but afa'in. And next, the mata is another word. And this afa'in and mata joining together, blending together, and because meme carries a tashdid, then we have to make a nasal sound about 2 seconds. Okay? And in the second line, in the bracket, you can find here, though the excessive alif has been omitted. And that will be the right pronunciation of that one. So I will do that one. Each one of you will be reciting on this one. Remember, a similar example of afa'in without this excessive alif is also in Surah Anbiya, Suratul Anbiya, chapter 21, verse 35. So at home you can make a practice, okay, and also you can teach others to make your own notes as well. So as we are reading the Holy Quran, the words of the Holy Quran, so what is the first etiquette or manner before starting the Holy Quran, Noman?
It's A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir
Yes, seeking refuge with Allah from the accursed Satan, ta'awuz or al-isti'aza, and that is called A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajim. I will do a systematic start. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم
أفإن مات Okay, if I do afa im mata, that will be right or wrong? Wrong, okay? Now, in this example, I will do waqf at the end. I will stop at the end, and you know that the last stroke, the stroke on the last consonant is dropped, and a conditional sukoon comes there. Afa im mat. Okay, now the second example, Suratul Anbiya, chapter 21, verse 35. Okay, can you find for me from the Holy Quran, chapter 21, verse number 35? Did you find?
Yes.
Okay, can you find on the margin additional information that this is Alif Zaida? Yes? Yes. So on this Alif Zaida, it is written on the margin.
Yes.
Okay. And also you can find here that in this copy of the Holy Quran, Yassar al-Quran style, there is a cross on this, Alif cross. alif zaida. So this will not be recited. Okay. In this case, each one will be reciting these two examples from the screen. Okay, first Noman.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أفإن متفهم
أفإن مات, because alif is there. You know, the first excessive alif will be dropped, but the second word mata, this alif will be pronounced. No, not in this case. You know, from the screen. I said from the screen.
أفإن مات
with waqf.
أفإن مات.
Now the next example. You know the which is yes.
أفإن مت فهم الخالدون.
Okay. Hanan.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أفإن مات أفإن مات أفإن مت فهم الخالدون.
Okay, Jazakumullah. Next example here in Surah Yunus, chapter 10, verse 76. Okay, and the word is mala'ihi, ila fir'auna wa mala'ihi. After mim, lam, and followed by excessive alif. And that alif carries a sign of sukoon, small circle, or a cross sometime. And in bracket, the pronunciation guide has been given. Ila fir'auna wa mala'i, not mala'i. Ila fir'auna wa mala'i. And below on the screen, you can find 4 different examples, 4 other places where the same word has appeared. So wherever the word mala'ihi has comes, you have to pronounce accordingly, that dropping the excessive alif which has come after lam. Okay, so I will do this one. Ila fir'auna wa mala'ihi. Do that.
إلى فرعون وملئه
إلى فرعون وملئه
إلى فرعون وملئه.
Okay. Now, can you find an example, anyone of these 4 examples, Surah Al-Araf, Surah Hud, Al-Mu'minun, Al-Qasas? Any example? Did you find? What's the page number?
345.
345 of this Yaslam Quran.
Surah Al-Mu'minun.
Surah Al-Mu'minun. Okay. Ila fir'auna wa mala'ihi. Okay. And on the margin you can find additional information about the alif saida. Did you find the same or another one?
I have from Surah Al-Araf.
Surah Al-Araf, chapter 7, 104. What's your page number?
It's page number 123.
123.
163.
163. Okay. And you can find additional information on the margin as well. Okay. And the same word, ila fir'auna wa mala'ihi. Okay. And on mala'ihi, on this alif, there is no sign of a small circle or a cross, but because of the rule, whether you can find a sign or not, this word will always, excessive alif will be dropped. Wa mala'i, not mala'i. Alright, good. And the similar example here, min fir'auna wa mala'ihim, the same word, but you know the last bit has changed. Instead of mala'ihi, mala'ihim. This is a grammatical meaning in that one, is a construction structure, but the same rule will be applied here. Min fir'auna wa mala'ihim
من فرعون وملئهم.
Say again.
من فرعون وملئهم.
Okay, good. Excessive alif in between the letters of a word, and this example has been taken from Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3, 159. And it is very, very important to make a practice of such examples. Here, you can find here in from the Holy Quran. Now, you see that la, meaning-wise, la means not. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. This is that perfect book. There is absolutely no doubt in it. La means not. And if you drop the letter alif from la, it becomes la. La with fatha, la. And it means sure. Opposite meaning. 3-4 times it has come in Surah At-Takasur, At-Takasur, about Latus alunna, Lataravunna. And many times as well in other portions of the Holy Quran. And it means sure. Certainly. So here, not la ilallahi tusharun. The meaning will be completely changed. And the real purport of this message will be lost. La ilallahi tusharun. That surely you will be gathered towards Allah. Okay? So make sure that here, though the alif is written here, and it looks like a la, but it will be pronounced la ilallah. Okay? So you say, la ilallahi tuhsharun.
La ilallahi tuhsharun.
Okay. If we do la ilallahi tusharun, that will be right or wrong? Wrong, totally wrong. Okay? So additional information should be taken care into. La ilallahi tuhsharun.
La ilallahi tuhsharun.
The first, this letter la should be taken as only 1 second, 1 count. Because there is only fatha. We are omitting the excessive alif, which comes after, which has been written there in the text. Okay, but we have been facilitated by putting some sign or some schoon or a cross. Okay, another example is this one, and this is Surah Al-Hashr, chapter 59, verse 14. And again here, it looks like a la, but here this la will be pronounced short, without alif, or dropping excessive alif, as it has been given in the second line in the bracket. Okay? So I will read first, and each one will be reading this one. So make sure you apply all the rules which you have learned so far. لأنتم أشد رهبة في صدورهم من الله. Okay, Noman.
لأنتم أشد رهبة في صدورهم من الله.
Okay. Manna.
لأنتم أشد رهبة في صدورهم من الله.
Okay. You see on the rahbatan, this ha should come from the bottom of throat. Okay. There should be no tinge, it has come from the middle of throat. A deep blunt voice is needed in this one. Rahbatan. Okay, that's good. Another example, Surah As-Saffat, chapter 37, verse 69, and here again it is written like a la, but this alif will be dropped and it will be la ilal jahim. It has in the bracket. ثم إن مرجعهم لإلى الجحيم.
ثم إن مرجعهم لإلى الجحيم.
Okay, make sure that the ha should come from the middle of throat, this ha. And also this is good example. You know that there are two letters of nasal sound, two letters of gunna. Mim gunna, mim mushaddad, and noon mushaddad always produce a gunna sound, nasal sound. And this here, thumma, the first word, also producing the nasal sound about 2 seconds, and then noon mushaddad also producing nasal sound. And then we carry on. Okay. Each one will be reciting separately, okay, the whole line. First, Mannan, you do that.
ثم إن مرجعهم لإلى الجحيم.
Okay, make sure that la quickly join la ilal. You know, just one count, not a trace or tinge, you know, should be recognized that, you know, it has been pronounced little bit more. La ilal jahim, like kataba, kataba, balagha, like this one. Say again.
ثم إن مرجعهم لإلى الجحيم.
Okay, good.
ثم إن مرجعهم لإلى الجحيم.
Okay, you have done good, but you have to work out on the ha, ilal jahim. You know, it's coming from the middle of throat. You know, you have to recognize or make a difference between that ha, you know, which has two eye, you can see, you know, which is in the previous example, and this ha, which is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Okay, you need more work on that one. Okay, this is another example. Here the word, now Surah An-Naml, chapter 27, verse 22. Now here you can see that 3 times short form of la, you know, lam with fatha, la u'adhibanna, la azbahanna, la ya'tiyanna, all producing, all giving us this message that surely, okay, certainly, not the meaning of la, okay. Now this la u'adhibannahu, la azbahannahu, la ya'tiyanna will be pronounced in the same form, same structure, same emphasis should be given, okay, because the is giving the same message. Though in the second example the word la is written there, but if you can find from the copy of the Holy Quran, additional information will be there that this is alif zaida, and this alif must be dropped in recitation, okay, whether and this is a part of that that word, okay. So we'll do this one. لَأُعَذِّبَنَّهُ عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا أَوْ لَأَذْبَحَنَّهُ أَوْ لَيَأْتِيَنِّي بِسُلْطَانٍ مُبِينٍ.
لأعذبنه عذابا شديدا أو لأذبحنه أو ليأتيني بسلطان مبين.
Okay, I think this is a good practice for, you know, long breath, okay. But in this case, you know, wherever you want to continue, if you want to stop there and take a fresh breath and then start again from the, you know, next, or keeping in mind the meanings as well. So in this case, we will only focus on that special word, which is we are practicing on that one. أو لأذبحنه
أو لأذبحنه
لأذبحنه